So if you all are ready, I'll hit admit.
Sure. Hi, Paul.
Good evening.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, can you guys hear me? I was having audio issues earlier.
Yep, we can hear
You're
you.
good.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, welcome to the August 28th meeting of the Dover Conservation Commission. Lori, would you do your thing?
Sure. Following guidance issued by the governor regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely. Individuals wishing to participate may do so by using Zoom video conferencing. To join the meeting by video conferencing using a computer or tablet, you can use the link. To join by telephone only, call the number and enter the meeting ID and the passcode, and the meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So first on our agenda is a certificate of compliance, a discussion of the certificate of compliance for Red Robin. Who's representing them?
Paul McGovern's here.
Paul?
Hi, guys.
Hey, you want to fill us in? Tell us what the discussion's about?
Well, yeah, it was you guys that requested us to be on it, but we are working on our partial certificate of compliance request. I thought we would have it in advance of this meeting. We've had a few minor delays just getting some of the paperwork together, but our intent is to get the application into you guys prior to the next deadline. So I would assume that's for what, two meetings away.
Yes.
So that's all right. We
Wednesdays.
are working our way through. It's paperwork items. We have the landscaping work is done. All of the work in the buffer zone is done. So we're trying to prepare the necessary paperwork to get into you guys.
Okay. Janet, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, so I actually had made the recommendation that we have Paul in. Paul and I've had a couple discussions going way back, but I do have some concerns. We have not received the required monthly progress reports in many months. There are also a number of outstanding reports that we should have been receiving but have not. That includes a mitigation and invasive species removal monitoring report. And also we have not received any of the NPDES or SWIP inspection reports. In the order of conditions, whenever there was a heavy rain that triggered those inspection reports, we were supposed to be getting those. So I think there's some background information that we really need to have before we can even consider the partial certificate of compliance. And also, Paul, for certificates of compliance, we require that those be submitted hard copies 2 weeks in advance of a meeting. So you've missed the deadline for the September 11th meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I expect we'll be two meetings from now. That's our target, what we're trying to make. I know my wetland consultant, who's Deb Anderson, I know she has the invasive species reporting done. She was planning on submitting it as part of that. So we need to review what the requirements are and get you guys what you need.
Okay, and also, as the commission will recall, we had a third-party reviewer on this. Paul looked at the wetlands issues, and then we had Tetra Tech look at the stormwater issues. So a big piece of this will be evaluating the stormwater system for compliance. And in the order of conditions, we specifically spelled out that we would bring on a third party to review the stormwater compliance for a certificate of compliance. So I don't think this is going to be a one meeting review. I think whatever you submit to us, and Paul, I'll send you the address where the Tetra Tech document should go. Because we'll want
When you said, sorry, go ahead.
I think I was done.
When you say the Tetra Tech document, what do you mean by that?
So the certificate of compliance, whatever you submit, that we will then forward to Tetra Tech. Yes, so,
Yeah.
and it may take them some time to come out and review the information and your as-built, so,
Yeah,
there's-
so Tetra Tech were on site a number of times during the installation, including when it was finalized prior to on all of the stormwater installation. So they have checked it out, obviously whatever they need to do for their certificate of compliance, but they were there a number of times through the installation.
Okay, and in general, I know the commission doesn't favor partial COCs. DEP doesn't like them either, but in this case, I think because the building is partially occupied now, that it's important that we review where the project stands now in case there are outstanding issues. There was fairly extensive native plantings, and we required a 3 growing season review on those. So we're at least a year away from a full partial certificate of compliance, but I think this will be a good time to review the current status of the project. Paul, a couple things I wanted to confirm with you. There hasn't been, or you don't anticipate any transfer of ownership, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then I know the other outstanding pieces that we can take care of, and I'll work with Deb Anderson on these, was the educational signage that you proposed. There were some bird boxes to be installed. And then we had our regular signage. We had 2 types of signs and permanent bounds to go in. So we can try to wrap all that up under the partial.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I know you said that you don't necessarily, or the typical thing is not to do a partial, but so are we looking at getting a partial issued and then getting a final in a year's time or whatever, 18 months time, whatever it is? Is that the process?
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. That we do it in 2 stages, get the bulk of the order of conditions reviewed, and then come back when the plant monitoring has been completed. So that would be
But
my,
I'm assuming for the likes of Tetra Tech, if they sign off on this now on a partial, they're not going to have to sign off on it again for a final. Am I correct in saying that?
yes, that would be correct. That would be the intent, that it really, the only outstanding requirement would be the plant monitoring.
Okay.
Okay,
I just wanted to mention, Tim, that we'll have to get estimates for that work from Tetra Tech and from Paul McManus too.
okay. Okay, anything else?
Lori,
Paul,
let's
did
see.
you have, Paul McManus, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I commented on the draft signs, which I thought were pretty good.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, Lori, will you reach out to Tetra Tech to get an estimate from them?
Yes, and it's specified in the order of conditions what they need to review for the certificate of compliance.
It will be everything related to stormwater and all the on-site structures.
Okay.
So just on that, we had in the original order of conditions, there was a dollar figure of $5,000 towards Tetra Tech's role in all of this. I believe we have already exceeded that. Does that mean it's going to go?
Paul McGovern, do you have an as-built plan done?
Yes. We have to have it anyway for everything that's on site, but we do have an as-built, yes.
Okay, so your order of conditions had an estimate of $5,000?
I'm not sure that it was necessarily an estimate. It was a limit that was put on it for that, because it was kind of left, and initially there was no figure, and we asked just that it wasn't open-ended. So the condition specifies $5,000. There is a term in there that if it's something additional is deemed necessary, but my understanding was that was to include the review of the stormwater. And I know they were on site when we were installing the stormwater, they were on site a bunch of times. Listen, it is what it is. I'm not saying we're
Yes.
going to cause a fuss on it, but
I guess that's good to know.
but again, I don't want to leave this open-ended to run more than 5,000 again or something like that.
Sure.
I have no idea
Oh, I
the scope
understand.
that's involved. It's
Yeah,
Well, I
so,
think you have to talk to them about an estimate of what it takes, yeah.
yeah, so the sooner you could get your COC request in, and your certification letter from, I'm assuming that'll come from a PE, identifying any deviations, and also identifying the outstanding work to be done. But once we get that to Tetra Tech, they'll be able to look at that and come up with an estimate, in terms of what their review will cost. That's probably the best approach.
okay.
Okay. Thank you. Our next on our agenda is two requests for certificate of compliance. First is 210 Claybrook Road.
Paul, Tim, you
Yes.
skipped over 29 Saddle Ridge
Oh, I'm
Road.
sorry. Yeah, 29 Saddle Ridge Road. Is that Scott or Mark?
I'll be opening the presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Mark Arnold with Goddard Consulting here on behalf of the applicant in regards to the discussion for the enforcement order for 29 Saddle Ridge Road. So the applicant's team, we submitted a letter dated August 17th, reviewing a few things. One is we looked at, we did some data collection and reviewing of the well data in the town of Dover. The USGS has an active well. It's monitored very closely. And we looked at the well data to look at groundwater elevations and changes, particularly looking at what is the mean average groundwater elevation in Dover. And this is all tied to the bylaws definition for ILSF, which is an area which at least once a year confines standing water to a volume of at least 1/6 acre foot and an average depth of at least 6 inches. And so the most logical explanation of at least once a year seems to be equivalent to the mean annual average elevation within an area. So looking at the well data, we provided a chart which is in our report. It shows the 60 years of data, and it also shows the mean average elevation based on the fluctuations of groundwater from year to year. Again, this is over 60 years of groundwater data. So the well is in the same geological situation as the property itself. We have sand and gravel on site, sand and gravel at the well. So hydrologically, groundwater is going to be manipulating around the same way, same fluctuations, same impacts and natural occurring events from the site compared to the well. And when you look at that data and we look at the instances of documentation of when the well was documented when it was as high groundwater over the average and what was happening on the site, we saw definitely consistent changes to the well and the site itself insofar as when the groundwater was high on site, the groundwater was high at the well as well, indicating correlation between natural events, but also anomalies such as large rain events, snow melt and rain, and abnormal seasons of wet conditions. So looking back, if you looking at the observations made, particularly in this year, in January, we had a very large rain event with snow melt just before the observation made. And so you ended up with a fluctuation where we had high groundwater, and then we had a snow melt rain event, which recharged the volume of water quickly. And then, but that's all kind of linked towards a large abnormal event with high groundwater. That's not kind of considering an average condition in the area. The observations in March and early April are also kind of tied to large rain events. The season was abnormally wet. 4 inches of rain over the average in eastern Massachusetts was what we had. So we had a lot of water in the area that's not normally in the area, which would abnormally affect the observations that are seen on the property. So in terms of our analysis, we think that there isn't really anything that indicates here that the observations made were average for the year. And everything else, we haven't really seen anything close to the limits of the bylaw threshold, except for when we've had these large snowmelt rain events or a very wet spring. Everything else has been kind of quiet in terms of getting towards that limit. And so we have groundwater data that kind of goes over 60 years, looks at that consideration of abnormal hydrologic conditions. The water elevations don't seem to indicate average because we've got abnormal precipitation events and high temperatures in the winter, which cause abnormal snowmelt, which causes higher ponding. That's, again, not a normal, mean, average, typical condition, which is what ILSF is looking for. And so from that perspective, we think that there isn't really data here to indicate that the area is jurisdictional based on the observations, because it's not looking at average conditions, which is what the bylaw would be looking for in terms of being a reasonable understanding of the threshold that would trigger ILSF jurisdiction under the bylaw. I can provide more detail, but that's a high level view. And I'm not sure if Paul wants to present his report as well.
Cool.
Sure, thanks, Mark. So I did review Mark's letter. I sent a letter to the commission dated August 24. And essentially my conclusion is that, you know, what Mark and his shop have done is, you know, is a reasonable effort to try and tease out this question of, you know, how do you predict what at least once a year really is? You know, where is that threshold? But I guess I think in reality, I think what they have available to them, I won't criticize the work because I think it was a good effort to really get at it. But I think the information that they have available to them falls short of really being able to make a definitive statement. You know, I mean, Mark talked about the January 10. You know, we had a rain with snowmelt. I mean, that's pretty typical January event. You know, these past few years that we get a significant. You know, we get some snow followed by a period where it all just melts and goes away, and rain and warm weather. So it's a really difficult question, and I think the other part of the problem is that, you know, at least once a year is obviously can be a very ephemeral condition, and there's a whole bunch of different circumstances that on any given site that could result in the high water condition for that site. You know, it could be high groundwater. It could be a big rain event. It could be a lot of snow melt. It could be any number of different things. And it's not even necessarily, even on the same site, it's not even necessarily the same from year to year. So I'm not in a position to render a strong opinion about whether I think the data supports a conclusion one way or the other. But I think that the information available is just problematic. You know, absent absent a, long-term data logger, at the site, we have the topography, so we have the benefit of being able to back calculate volume from an elevation. And I think we came to terms with that. And Mark's used that, kind of consensus conversion of elevation to volume. The other thing I would note is that we're in a what appears to be a changing climate scenario. And when I looked at the chart, I note from the chart, the chart shows 60 years of high groundwater data, which is great. It's probably all that's available. 6 of the past 8 years had observations above the 60-year average, and 8 of the past 14 years. So the average high water calculated for a more recent period would be higher to some degree. I don't know exactly what. I didn't do the math. So it's a difficult question. As I said, I don't have any criticism for the analysis, but I think the information available, in my view, doesn't allow for a strong conclusion. The commission may decide that it's enough. It's enough evidence to agree with Goddard's conclusion, but that's really a judgment call that you're going to have to make.
Thanks, Paul. I would say that I think that the changing climate is a major factor here. We seem to be getting 200 or 300 year storms every year. Not 100 years. So I'm not sure that's valid currently. That your data goes back before we were getting these more common large storms. So I don't know. Janet, did you have oh yes, you did. There you are.
Yes. Yeah, so I just want to give a little more context here. I actually attended a DEP training program this past Monday. One of the topics was how to calculate and identify isolated land subject to flooding. The DEP definition, the threshold is lower. It's a 1/4 acre foot, but other than that, it's basically the same in terms of identifying the boundary. And the language used in under DEP, the regs, is the maximum extent of flooding observed or recorded. And I did specifically ask if they could provide, is there any more guidance when you say observed? And they said no. As long as you have some credible information that a certain elevation was observed, a certain boundary was observed, that it's in the commission's discretion then to find whether there's jurisdiction or not. And again, I put a little recap in my notes that this was previously discussed on May 22nd at our meeting. And the commission found that the pond on the property did meet the jurisdictional requirements based on the documented on-site observations of Chairman John Sullivan on January 10th, 2024, and then also by Paul McManus on April 10th, 2024. Certainly the applicant or the owner is entitled to present additional data and documentation, but the feedback I got directly from DEP, from 2 individuals from the wetland division, was that this is up to the commission's discretion, and that their input was, if it's been observed, it's been observed, and that is a solid foundation for a jurisdictional finding.
Just if I may, just a quick clarification for the commission. So the maximum observed is maximum observed or recorded is the limit of ILSF once it's found to be present. So this is a confusing thing because there's always a two-step process. So the first step in that is to determine if you get that at least once a year threshold that Mark referenced. And then if that first step is satisfied, then one goes to say, okay, ILSF exists. What is its limit? And the limit is the maximum observed or recorded. So we're still what Mark is describing is his analysis he's got evidence that the information on the table isn't sufficient to satisfy that first criterion of the quarter-acre foot, sixth-acre foot, at least once a year.
Thank you,
Question
Paul.
on that?
Also, just to quickly follow up, DEP also made the point that if the bylaw is stricter in terms of the determination, we could find jurisdiction under the bylaw only. It doesn't have to be both the bylaw and under the state act.
Mark?
I just wanted to make one point, and I don't know if the commission has looked at the chart, but the chart does show natural fluctuations. So back in the 60s and 70s, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row that were above the average line. And then you have some changes, then you had a cluster below, and now we're having a cluster above. So it can cluster in terms of elevations above and below the mean. So just in terms of the average, we did look at that question of, is the mean being manipulated by highs and lows of drastic clusters? But there are clusters of averages above and below the line that seem to just fluctuate. And that could just be based, sometimes you get 2 years in a row just because you get one wet year and the end of the year. The next spring is often high as well. So just in terms of the average, just want to clarify that there are clusters when we have averages high and low. So I think there is some climate there, but and the data actually shows that. And since the clusters, again, in the 60s and 70s, we had a cluster of 7 years, we were all above the average. So there are some clusters that get up there, and that was a while ago, not recently.
Anna? You're next, John.
I know we've gone over this 1,000,001 times, but if the flooding in these anomalous events is over the threshold, does our bylaw say that it can't be 100-year storms? Because we get 100-year storms, and the 60s was before climate change really started ramping up. So, I mean, it seems to me if we're including anomalous events, it's even more clear that this is ILSF, unless I'm completely missing something.
No, the standard is at least once a year. And
Okay.
and that's why I brought the issue about it could be, it could be a hurricane in August in 1 year. It could be a rainfall and snow melt in February the next year, and so forth. But if it happens every year, then the threshold is satisfied. So
Okay.
John?
Hi. So I came in after I'm assuming Mark gave a presentation on this, but I have some questions that have lingered. A couple things. One is our bylaw says 1 year if you meet the threshold, flat, period. It struck me that that Goddard's report was a little there's a little obfuscation in there dealing with groundwater and so forth, because one can make a case that things wouldn't flood if your groundwater was lower. However, that may not be the case. You have a severe storm that comes in and the elevation rises before it has a chance to be absorbed. And therefore it creates the ILSF that we saw there, and has nothing to do with the water table, because it just happens to be the immediate saturation of the soil, whatever the conditions were. We have 2 observations within this calendar year of where it's reached that threshold. So I'm a little confused, and because maybe when I've come in the middle of this particular discussion, is why water is even being considered by the board, because I don't know if it is pertinent relative to the storms that we've had.
I'm lost
So
on that too.
and then one other, yeah, I think it's a red herring. I think it has nothing to do with this. The other thing is that one of the photos that I sent from April showed not only that it had reached, and that was 8 hours after things had ended, not only that it had reached the threshold relative to where its proximity was to the benchmark and things of that nature, but I showed a section, I circled it, where there was a hydrological connection to an area of water be off the property. So that number one, that added to the cubic footage that was there. Probably not significantly, probably to to 150 to 200 cubic feet. However, I didn't turn the camera around and point at the standing water that was on the neighbor's property. So this creates, with adequate storm runoff, this creates something that goes beyond the property line and becomes a bigger hydrology event there. So I think is it rare? It's probably appearing to be less rare. But I just don't see, our thing says you observe it once, it qualifies. And it's clear that, that it met that threshold twice so far. Yeah, I think the concern about climate change or more severe storms, boy, if you get Mike Angieri, the town engineer, talking about that, he has been keeping data in the last 10 years, and he just finds it alarming at the sheer density of rain that we get for many of these storms. So that being said, that's my opinion on that. The other aspect is they put a pond in there for a reason. All the topography there shows that this is where water drains. So maybe they made the best of a situation, they being the previous owner, or whoever dug that pond in there. But that's clearly where water goes anyway. And I think what we've been dancing around this whole time is we have something that under the bylaw qualifies for some form of wetland review. What do you want to do with the property? What is it? I think the idea of filling it 100% in is only going to move water over to neighboring properties. And I think that we've never got a firm answer or a proposal that if it were determined not to be, or if you're right on the edge and can we give you some dispensation, this is what we would like to do. So come clean on it, because we're just pedaling around in circles here, and my patience is getting a little exhausted here. And so, what's up, Mark? What's the long-term goal here? If you could get what you want.
Let the applicant speak, because he actually, I think, can do a better job at speaking to what he's really what he really is concerned about here, and what his kind of goal is to make
By
sure
the time this is done, there will be no worry about children being damaged, damaged there, because this is just going to go on and on. But Vadran, as I'm saying, this will always be a wetlands. I don't see the board saying that you go ahead and fill this in 100%, because then the water's going to have to go elsewhere. What is it that you're hoping to do here?
Okay. Thank you so much, Chair, for this opportunity, and thank you for reviewing the documents. I think maybe it's just starting out from what I've observed so far with Paul's report and Goddard's report. I presume these were data-driven, and these are expert in their domain. And from all the currently available data to date, it remains inconclusive on the determination of jurisdictional status.
Can I just stop for a moment, because I came in a little late, and I apologize for that. Mark, tell me succinctly why groundwater has anything to do with a storm that creates something that's an observable event.
So,
because that is, in my understanding, that's predominantly what the majority of your data in your report is resting on the groundwater history. Is that correct?
Yeah, groundwater and also making note of heavy rain events. So because ILSF is not searching for the 100-year or the 500-year rain event elevation. And so otherwise you can make a determination of ILSF that is actually smaller than what it could be, because I mean, this year you have a 10-year storm, next year you have a 100-year storm, and all of a sudden the pond is an ILSF area that was thought to be jurisdictional 10 years ago is bigger or larger in a different shape than we ever thought it was going to be. So looking at that in context of, okay, what is a reasonable determination for the average there, we wanted to look at how groundwater impacts the flooding, because if you have a lot more groundwater in the ecosystem as a whole, the ILSF is going to flood differently than under average conditions, because the ILSF can be impacted by groundwater. And so that's why we wanted to look at that information to see if there was correlation. And we thought there was correlation with high groundwater in the area correlating with the observations that were made. So that was kind of, again, trying to find a reasonable kind of analysis to figure out how do we sort this out. And we thought this was information that was pertinent to kind of look at, considering what was observed this year, to kind of help the commission assess kind of what we thought was really out there.
So the bylaw, though, says a single observation of this works. That's what, you know, that's what it's based on. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Where are
And
you?
Where does
Excuse me. Where are you seeing that, John and Tim?
I don't have it in front of me. I thought that's, as we had gone over this on multiple occasions, I thought it was an observation of high water, you know, mark. And I don't know if Janet had pulled that up at some
Well,
point.
again, I think,
and that's bylaw, not.
Maybe you missed this. There was, I was trying to make a clarification about the two sets of analyses. The first one is the threshold issue, which I'm reading it here. At least once a year confines standing water to a volume of at least 1/6 acre foot to an average depth of 6 inches.
Okay.
And then the boundary, if ILSF is found to exist, the boundary is that single maximum observed or recorded.
Okay.
But
based
I
on
agree
what
with I agree with Mark that the initial review is to determine, does that 6 acre foot volume occur at least once a year?
And based on the photos that I sent you from that January storm, and you know, in doing the measurements there, did that appear to you as if it had met that threshold?
Yes, and Mark acknowledges that too. So it was on your observation, and then mine in April or March.
Okay. So basically, we've met the first step in your concern. You know, the process. That
well, we have two. You have your observation and my observation translated through the topography into a volume, result in a 6 acre foot.
Okay. So then the question is, if we know that, and there is, in portions of this, there is a top of bank involved here, because this was artificial, and I think you can see that. So I think if we've established that it met the threshold of observation, whether we have to deal with the perimeter you know, especially as it goes into the neighbors, you know, with even more rain or something like that, what's the concern about whether it gets bigger? If you know, it seems to me, as a board, even though I said we haven't been clearly asked, whether we protect an ILSF that exists there because we've observed it, and then in what way do we do so, or whether the applicant is looking to fill it in which way are we then derelict in our protection of that? And it does seem we've met the threshold twice so far to determine that it's there. We haven't figured out what the maximum extent of it is, but I don't think we're really that concerned about the maximum extent, other than how, if anything was to be re-landscaped, what's handled there. Mark, what's your
I was
those
just,
are both
there
statements.
is a reference to in the jurisdictional statement for isolated land such as flooding, there is a reference to using considering groundwater as well as surface water runoff
Is it in our bylaw? Does it mention that?
It is. This is your regulations, yeah. So it's in reference to the if drainage calculations are utilized in an effort to determine if the depression qualifies as isolated such as flooding, and or to establish the boundary, said calculation shall consider groundwater as well as surface water runoff. So it does consider that, and in the bylaw.
It would seem to me that that may be there, especially if we didn't have observations that confirm that. But I think that once you have the observation, it's no longer a concern about groundwater because you're not trying to see whether or not it could happen. We know that it does happen. Anna, you had your hand up?
Yeah,
No, I'm good now. I was actually just asking where are we
Oh.
getting groundwater? But reading the regulations more, there's something in here I'm just finding about clay barriers. Has anyone looked into that?
So was there
'Cause I
a
know we
reg-
have
is
that
it-
here.
Is that in the regulation? Or is that
Um,
something we brought up anecdotally?
There's in the pond definition
okay.
has the state one, and I think the bylaw too, the pond definition has actually
clay
the bylaw just defers to the state regs, which
Okay.
with respect to a pond, and
That's
there's an exclusion for man-made lined areas not being ponds, but we're not in that part of the regs.
No,
Okay,
but
thanks.
I have brought this up in the early days that this is an artificial body. And it does have a clay liner. And I was hoping that Goddard or Cheney, whatever, would incorporate that into their concern here. And what I see is that, as I mentioned earlier, is this is clearly an area where water ponds, doesn't make a pond, but it ponds, the topography there. The question is, with an underlying layer of clay, this is clearly artificial. If that clay or a portion of it was removed, this may then allow some tenuous connection to groundwater, studies that Mark did. Would it fill enough to then still be an ILSF? And it's interesting because we have this lovely picture of a very healthy catfish. So, in order to rebut the vernal pool concern. At the same time, I'm kind of getting the feeling, which is, okay, so it's okay to kill the catfish, but not the fairy shrimp. But there is an artificiality here, but I have not heard from the applicant or the applicant's representatives if that plays a role, what they actually want to do, what the hydrology in general would do if that was removed. I believe you'll still have a wet area there, that there was a natural wet area based on the natural grade and so forth. And I haven't, if there's any room for compromise, that would be in that area there. I just want to, Janet's had her hand up for a bit.
Yeah.
So just to clarify quickly, the pervious or impervious soil issue comes up under our performance standards in
Mhm.
evaluating any change or disturbance, if it is ILSF. So that would be like the second step. But in the enforcement order that we issued, we simply asked the property owner to have it professionally delineated and what the existing conditions were. What was the extent of disturbance? And then we would have a follow-up discussion that would include, well, what do you want to do there?
Mhm.
What you want to do, does it meet the performance standards or not? So, but I also just want to point out, going way back, that it in fact was the elevation determinations done by Cheney Engineering that actually documented that it would meet the 1/6 acre foot volume at elevation contour 221. That was documented by Cheney.
Mhm.
So just to clarify that, and we have two observations that documents that those contour levels, that it exceeded 221 on 2 occasions.
So it would seem at this point, we've met the first standard that Paul referenced, which is based on observation, multiple observations, it is an ILSF. At this point, it seems like we then enter into the second one, which would also incorporate, Jen, as you just mentioned, whether the impact of impervious soils plays a role in this. And whether there's a difference in artificially implemented impervious soils versus, a natural clay liner or peat liner or something like that. Is that
John, I
Paul?
can, excuse me,
Go
I
ahead.
have a little information with respect to that.
Yeah.
If you remember, when you come out the driveway at 29 Saddle Ridge, if you look to the left, the
Mhm.
corner of Conrick Lane,
Mhm.
there's a vernal pool, which even from the right of way, I observed, multiple wood frogs. Vajran was with me that day, multiple wood frogs, egg masses in that pool that I could just, like I said, just see from the shoulder of the road. That pool, based upon the topo and the Mass GIS, that pool is at very similar elevation to the area that we're talking about at 29 Saddle Ridge.
Really
So
drops. Mhm.
to your question about what would happen if you removed all the clay, I think you would still, you'd still be in, based on seeing water across the street at the same elevation, I would say you're still going to be in the water at 29 Saddle Ridge.
Okay, because it's also, as I mentioned before, I actually, behind my house, just off my property, are 2 such ponds that have clay in them. That's why, and water is actively diverted to them. But sometimes people back in the 60s or 70s would put clay in because if you didn't, it was mucky underfoot and it didn't feel nice. And they were, basically looking for a freshwater pool of some sort there, so that it wasn't necessarily there to hold the water, but sometimes it was just there just to make it nicer. So you're saying that they're at similar levels elevation wise, and clearly the vernal pool didn't have clay, artificially added to it. So that still brings us back. So that then makes a concern of, then this may stay in ILSF regardless. Is that kind of your point there?
I mean, in my view, based upon this, if you took out all that clay, you're still in the water table there, and it would still be standing water is what I'm inferring from the topography and the natural condition across the street.
Okay. So, and we all know this is a border issue, but we have, visually seen the threshold having been met. So the second point relative to that of the what to do once we've determined it was an ILSF, what flexibility do we have there, or where do we go from there, Paul?
Well, Janet raised a good point. I mean, that you have performance standards for work in ILSF, and the performance standards are they're elevated if you have vernal pool habitat, and they're reduced. The standards are reduced if there's not a direct connection to water table through impervious soils. But there are the first and foremost threshold relates to, if you do work in an ILSF, are you going to push water onto somebody else's property and cause harm? And then there are other performance standards that essentially relate to the interaction with groundwater. And as I said, if there's a liner and there's not an interaction with groundwater, then the performance standards for work in ILSF are less strict.
Mhm. I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
So if
it's
there's basically two categories of ILSF, there's one where you have pervious soils, and the other category is, well, I'll say there's three categories. The first is if it's a vernal pool. The number 2 and 3 relate to whether you have pervious soils underlying or impervious soils underlying. Because you can have ILSF, I've never seen one in Dover, but up in my neck of the woods, we have ILSFs that exist in just topographic depressions in the bedrock. So if there's an ILSF that is underlain by impervious soils, then the standards for working in it are less strict than if the underlying soils are pervious.
Mhm.
Is that better?
Yeah. Mhm. And we don't really know. We're now making a comparison to the vernal pool across the street in approximate similar elevation, and assuming that that would be the similar situation there if the clay level was removed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at that. I was really answering your question about, which was somewhat rhetorical, but not entirely, about, what if the clay weren't there? And my supposition from looking across the street, same elevation, is that I think this area would look very similar if the clay weren't there.
Okay, Janet?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly bring us back to the enforcement order. The first requirement was that a professional wetland scientist delineate the wetland resources, the boundaries, also identify the species and size of vegetation that was cut on the property. When I went out to the site, when we first got notification of this with John, it was clear vegetation was cut. We didn't do a thorough analysis. I'm not sure if it was BVW, but that also comes into play under the performance standard for ILSF. Anyways, the first step under the enforcement order was to get a snapshot as to what was probably there, what has been disturbed, and then we would move forward with the property owner to determine what his goals are, what he'd like to do out there, and is that allowed under our regulations.
Okay, so it seems.
Yeah, Janet, excuse me, John. Janet makes a good point. I mean, the area, I've only seen it in a pretty beat up condition, like most of us. But you do have an isolated vegetated wetland jurisdictional resource that doesn't require any ponding whatsoever. It requires wetland hydrology, but that can be just saturation even without ponding. Again, it's difficult to know. It's based, you have to have a wetland plain community and the hydrology, and it's really hard to know, given the fact that it was beat up. There was certainly some lawn in the backyard leading toward it, but that's another question.
I going through Google Earth Pro, which allowed me to go back in time a little bit, and if I forget what year, but I was able to get a sight line through the fall, leaves are off and so forth. So it seemed what I could find, what I could see was that this was basically patchy lawn, even around the back of it, with some shrubs, obviously some trees. We saw the trees that came down. I believe, Vardran, were the majority of those trees they were taken down, were those pine trees?
Yes, I think from the report from Deborah, she examined the soil around, she examined the height, whatever work that she had done there, and look at the trees, and she determined that this wasn't vegetated wetland in any shape or form. So I think for we're really going back and forth. It seems to me that
Actually, we're actually, I think we're getting somewhere. And if you,
oh,
I just,
okay, no,
let me, okay, so let me just, because that was my take when I was there. And the other take that I saw there was that because of the artificiality here, that this was predominantly top of bank stuff. Even though things had been mucked up with the machine and so forth, it did not appear to me like there was a thriving vegetated wetland community there. That basically it had been mowed. Some areas had gotten a little out of control. Shrubs, some invasives, but that was tough to tell. So I didn't get the sense that there was a thriving vegetative wetland BVW type of plants there. That this was maybe at some point was heavily manicured, but clearly not for 10 years, had not been kept up with, and that things had started to encroach here and there. But there was patchy grass around 3/4 of it. There may not have been over on the very far right rear or right front side of that, where there does seem to be a BVW community coming in from the neighbor there. So I guess that so given all that, we have something that appears to be ILSF. And it's interesting, Paul, you mentioned you could have ILSF even if you didn't have standing water, and yet we've been talking about a 6/8 acre a foot, or
No, you could have isolated vegetated wetland,
oh, okay, but not ILSF. Okay.
which you were just discussing and asking Roger about plant community. So if you don't have wetland veg, then you don't have IVW.
Okay, so rather than BVW. Okay.
Or BVW.
Okay.
So I would say we don't have BVW because it's in a bowl and there's no bordering stream.
Right.
All right. So I guess.
So well, let me switch over to you, Vardran, but with this. So basically, what we're saying is, try as you might, you have something that meets our jurisdiction or for an ILSF. However, we also recognize the artificiality of it. So in your best scenario, what would you like to do here?
I think all I kept hearing is from Paul is that the bylaw is problematic in terms of the way it's written, and that Paul, who's a paid consultant and expert in this, he opined that he cannot reasonably have any definitive conclusion on the jurisdictional status of the pond. Now, it is absolutely up to the commission with their power to make a call, and I don't mind any of that. In addition, I think Paul had mentioned to do long-term monitoring. I don't think one cannot explicitly guarantee that the outcome of further monitoring will be conclusive for any finite duration of observation. So I, as the homeowner, wanted to reduce the risk of drowning that the pond represents for my children or any visitor's children on the property by decreasing the depth of the pond. All aquatic life in the pond will be preserved. I never intended to totally 100% fill the pond or destroy wildlife habitat. So I'm happy to share any such plan for the ponding area with the commission upon request. And as a father, I went through this process to ensure the safety of my children growing up on the property, not to do anything in terms of destroying wildlife or whatever it is that would trigger jurisdiction or whatever sort of information asymmetry that was there that I wasn't aware of. But I absolutely defer to you to determine whether this is going to be considered jurisdictional or not. That is your call based on whatever evidence we have.
And so you're in your scenario, you'd like to fill in a portion of the pond to make it so that there is, or we'll call it a pond for lack of a better term, just because that water holding area, so that it still retains water, but is not as deep. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that was the plan from the get-go. That was the plan from the beginning. It was to essentially protect my children. So the depth of the pond in the middle can be greater than 3 feet. I
Mhm.
have toddlers. At the time when we began, my daughter was 1 year old. Was 1 year old, and my son was 3. Now I have 2 and 4 year old, and they're still at risk of drowning. And I have relatives who come in with little children. I don't want this to really represent a hazard. And the way that my son climbs and escapes constantly, I think from the first few meetings, I said, yeah, I could get a fence, but I'm not going to be able to just leave my eyes off of him and know that he can actually go in there, because that's the first place that he loved to run to, because he saw frogs, he was interested to whatever the most dangerous thing, that's what he loves to do. So no, I'm not here to destroy anything, fill up anything. I just didn't want it to be over 3 feet. I want it to be 2
So,
feet, and so that the
so
kids can walk.
you're looking to maintain a wetland community of some form, just one that would be potentially less hazardous to children.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So I guess commissioners and Paul and Janet, yeah, we are on the edge here. We also know that this is possibly due to the artificiality of having the clay on the bottom. We also know that the house is bought with, upon a broker telling him that he could fill it in, which they had no right to do. And I guess is there room for compromise here in terms of if a wetland community with the proper plan submitted to us is maintained, but they just bring the bottom up a bit, so that we technically, it's no longer ILSF, but we would treat it as such because that's what we came to. Is there any room for movement there, and what do we lose going one direction or the other? Let me just Anna had her hand up first, Amy, and then I'll Anna. Unmute.
I've talked a lot. Amy can go first if she wants, but I
Oh,
have a short question.
okay, go ahead, Amy.
I guess what I am worried about is what Paul was saying, which is that the point of an ISL, flooded area is to contain water so it doesn't end up on other people's property. As you noted, John, either the homeowner or the developer of the original property / subdivision put this in there to contain water. And if we make it less deep, it will continue. We're displacing water and pushing it somewhere else. Possibly more into Vadran's own lawn, and or I don't know how, but I guess that's what I'm worried about. The other is that, a toddler an unsupervised toddler can drown in 2 inches of water, so 3 feet is more than sufficient.
Janet?
I think, the question of, is there a compromise here? Is there something that the homeowner can be comfortable with, as well as meeting responsibility to protect the wetlands, is a little premature right now. My suggestion would be to restate that the enforcement order needs to be complied with, which will give the commission enough information to really be able to evaluate what.
So and then you've outlined that. What are the things that you see that you're still missing?
So what we asked for was a formal delineation, an assessment of because there is 100-foot buffer to ILSF, to do an inventory of the vegetation that was cut, and then get us that plan. And then based on that, we would review what the disturbance was and determine if there's any restoration needed. But I think also the homeowner could submit a proposal to what they want to do. So the commission would review what was the disturbance, what was that impact, how perhaps can we restore the site and maybe the buffer zone in a way that the homeowner can use his lawn adequately, but we can still protect this resource.
And do you see, if they would have to do that to in with any sort of submittal of making changes that Vadran had outlined to us, which is in essence would be bringing up the bottom of the middle section of the pond, and it obviously incorporated into that would be using the same flood data that we've observed things going past the 220. If you go ahead and do that relative to those calculations, is that going to go somewhere? Is it going to affect things and have that addressed as well? Does anybody? So we can do. I think what Janet just outlined. We can get the information that had been requested as part of the enforcement order. I think outline based on the photos and what we've seen where the ILSF actually is. So I think I'm getting the sense from commissioners based on questions. One thing is, it appears like it qualifies under ILSF, but we know that there's an artificiality possibly due to that. But I think that's up to the applicant to make that clearer to us in any sort of proposal. But I think at the very least to comply with the enforcement order, we want to see that the outlines of the ILSF, get a better idea of what was disturbed. I believe it sounded like did Deb do a vegetative inventory? Mark or Vadran, did Deb already?
Yes, these are the things that she specialized in, and she looked at, and she looked.
But do we get that report, Janet, from Deb Anderson?
What she submitted, we were originally just focused on the vernal pool. Her report focused just on whether or not this was a vernal pool. I don't believe there was any on-site assessment. There were no photos. There was no documentation of what was disturbed. I didn't see that.
Would it be useful to review this document thoroughly and just to make sure, because I believe she mentioned several scientific name of plants, and she went into details about the soil, and that was her expertise. But absolutely, Janet, if that's what you recall, I completely defer to you. But I think we should review the content of the documents accurately to further reflect what she actually did. Just to briefly chime in, I think you mentioned about boundary of ILSF. Commissioners, if you consider this pond ILSF, essentially my house is illegal, right? Because
no, your house is grandfathered.
Right,
so
but okay. So if the pond
it would be illegal to build it now.
Right, but if the pond was built before your bylaws, and the pond was built to meet the 1/4 acre foot, right? So now we can pick and choose what gets grandfathered in. And that's kind of like, but again, you guys have unchecked out.
No, that's not making sense. So go with it. I don't know. That's not making any sense to us based on our knowledge. So so unless you can go from there, they have nothing to do with each other. You have a pond that existed before you bought that. It looks like it was put in before. It could have been put in a backyard. Nobody saw it. It could have been put in after the Wetlands Protection Act. It could have been, it could have just been an expansion on a natural hole that always existed there. We don't know. So you have this thing in your backyard. So we take a look at it as now, but we're not going to penalize you and tell you to move your house or do any of that sort of stuff, because
so that's not allowed, right?
No, but that's the grandfathering component here, which is we're looking at it right now. you want to make a change to what you have. As far as we're concerned, what you have, you can keep, okay? However, you want to make a change to that. And so in order to do so, then you're going to break the grandfathering component there, and also possibly the act that we have, or our bylaws. And so
Okay.
we're trying to give you the ability to come up with an information to convince us why it helps the act as well as yourself. We're looking for a mutuality here, and
Sure.
to see whether or not that exists.
Okay, so
So
the
then,
map doesn't have to be, it can be any footage that makes sense. It doesn't need to be exactly what is written, because currently it says 100 foot off of the edge of the pond for an ILSF, that nothing can be there. That's
no,
what,
no,
That's not
no,
true.
no, that's
so
not true.
what does it
That's
say with the 100 foot?
no, that's the buffer.
Okay.
So outside of a vernal pool, that becomes a little bit more rigorous. But we basically have given you the benefit of the doubt that that it was not a vernal pool because a catfish was shown on film or video or digital whatnot, and there was a dispute about what type of frogs those were. They were clearly egg masses. We've given you a major. We're not arguing on that point. We're saying, okay, we'll give you that. So now you have a 100-foot buffer around any wetland. Your house, there are numerous houses in Dover that are well within 100 feet of wetland buffers, because they were built prior to the Wetlands Act. Or some of them, that buffer just allows, you can still build within that buffer, but you have to run it by conservation to make sure that how you build and how you protect the wetlands and so forth during construction, meets our requirements. So there's no prohibition on that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So what we have in front of us now is we have a body of water. Okay, we've determined that it's ILSF, but we understand the artificiality. Janet will look up some review what Deb had. I think what I'm saying to Mark, I think if we need to vote for it, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I view this, we have two observations of that it met the requirements, our bylaw requirements of ILSF. So I would like Mark to, with you, if you want to move forward on this, would be for a plan to be submitted, going back to what the enforcement order and outlining what that area is, and also showing the areas of disturbance and giving as much as they can an inventory of plants, that you mentioned that you believe Deb did. And then at that point, while he's already doing that, discuss with him the potential of what you're wanting to do, and he can look at the engineering component of whether or not it's practical, whether you can maintain the vegetation and the purposes of an ILSF while changing the elevation and not flooding somebody out. Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, the proposal is to alter what you've decided is a resource area. So that really needs to be a notice of intent, in my
Right.
opinion.
Well, yeah, that would be the next thing. Yeah.
And then two, in terms of information, Janet brought up the issue about pervious, impervious. I did observe some clay out within the ponding area. I think it would be important to know, outside the perimeter of that clearly, altered area, what are the soil conditions outside that? Because the flooding does go outside the boundary of that altered area. And then the NOI would need to look at the conditions of those soils, and then the performance standards associated with that. Because my guess is you're going to have an overlap. You're going to have both. And I would also, this is really for Mark, think about, for example, improving habitat. Perhaps the back half of this area could be more naturalized. And so that even if the water depth is reduced, you know, the threshold is that the commission has to be convinced that the resource areas would be protected, you know, across the board by the proposal. So I think, you know, I think it's conceivable without, you know, prejudging anything. I think it's conceivable that such a case might be made. But that some attention has to be paid to the performance standards, to the various interests.
So one thing, the easy way out, Bardron, is you put everything back together the way it had been. And you're done, but you'll still have your concerns about your children. The next step is but you still also have to comply with the enforcement order in terms of what the things I just outlined. The next step, we're not guaranteeing that there's approval, but we're just saying we're willing to listen. And if you can convince us, you and Goddard, that this works for everybody, then that's something that you're taking upon yourself. Is that clear?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Janet, you had your hand up?
So, so we've been discussing this for an hour and I know we have
Yeah.
some other business. So
Yeah.
my recommendation to the commission tonight would be that you reaffirm your finding from our May 22nd, 2024 meeting, that this is jurisdictional, isolated land subject to flooding, and that you reconfirm that the property owner needs to comply with the enforcement order. And that you state a deadline, I would say 3 or 4 weeks, but not any further. So that would be 2 separate votes, I would recommend. And then I do think it's premature to say an NOI is needed. DEP is very strong on their policy that an NOI is just for something that you know, that you would have approved anyway, and we don't know that yet until we get more information under the enforcement order. So, you know, those 2 steps, just reaffirming it's jurisdictional, and then reaffirm an enforcement order compliance date.
So, and I think that makes sense. And as it doesn't prevent Goddard Consulting from doing some of the preliminary work in terms of so that they could present to us at some point, you know, what their alternative would be here. But I'll entertain a motion to confirm our recognition of the ILSF as noted in our May meeting, that it has been observed twice in this year so far to reach the volume parameters incorporated in our bylaw. So why don't we, if somebody could so move that.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Amy? Tim?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Let's see, who else am I missing? Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay.
John, I just wanted to point out that the argument that it was there, Charles River's been there too. You can't fill that. So it's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
I guess,
specious argument.
yeah, I've been hesitant to bring this up, but I think Paul's observation that a non-clay bottom over there, and that's why I mentioned that this doesn't mean that we would agree to this, but it's really, we're if there's enough changes that could be done that seems to address the safety concerns and yet at the same time, in essence, expands or improves our wetland area. I think, you know, there's no question we need some balance there if you wanted to make any changes. And I think Paul outlined that as well, which is that, you know, it's not just a matter of putting in a couple feet of dirt and saying, okay, everything's hunky-dory. What else are you going to do that's going to preserve the functionality of what has been there? So I think the second thing to vote on was was to confirm the enforcement order. Is that correct?
That's right, and I recommended a deadline of 3 or 4 weeks.
And I would say four just to get the because we need that. It's really a 3-week deadline in order to get paperwork in before the next meeting. Is that something, Mark, that it seems you could handle?
Yes, we could definitely put that together if we need to.
Okay, and any questions, please contact Janet relative to what has been received and what is necessary for the enforcement order, okay? And I think Janet outlined it very well. Let's do the enforcement order, then, we proceed down there, and yet we don't need to proceed to a full-on NOI until we have an intermediary step that we have a chance to discuss. Okay, let's see, I'll entertain a motion.
But John,
Move-
oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, move to confirm the enforcement order with the requirement that supporting documentation be in our hands within 3 weeks.
Okay.
Oh,
For
that
the-
was,
for- What's that, Janet?
is it 3 weeks or 4 weeks?
Well,
It has to be in 3 weeks to be in our schedule for 4 weeks.
right, and to schedule it for 2 meetings from now.
Right.
Whatever that date is,
18th, September 18th.
okay?
Okay, so
Um,
by September 11th.
Okay, all in favor?
And I
Amy?
said second.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Amy,
Hi.
Tim,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, so that concludes that for this evening. So I appreciate that, and let's get this stuff done so that we're not going into the winter with a messy backyard there. Okay, thank you. Since I came in a little late, did you already deal with I imagine you did discuss Red
Yes.
Robin? Okay, great. And then we're looking for a request for a COC on 210 Claybrook. Janet, can you fill us in where we stand there, please?
Yes, so this was a tear down of a small home, a new build. And as I outlined in my notes, there are a number of outstanding issues that needed to be addressed. Nick Monahan, who was the builder, contacted me I had previously sent him the signage and the bound specs, so the permanent bounds were almost flush to the ground. We required that they be 18 inches. And those specs were clearly on the final approved plan. So that just got missed. That is a slope down. I'd recommend that those be reinstalled to be 18 inches. And then they only installed one type of sign, which was the no disturb, but we also required the no fertilizer, no pesticide sign. So that is needed as well. Let's see, there was a fence installed that was not approved on the plan. It also was not shown on the as-built plan, but it's very close to the wetland. And I think should be a discussion with the commission, why the fence was needed. And if that's something that you want to approve after the fact. Also some lawn area in the back, there's quite a slope in the back from the lawn down to where the fence is. That area has not been stabilized, so that needs a little more time, or perhaps it needs a little extra layer of seeding there. I think maybe with the rain, a lot of the seeding has washed off. Also, the applicant might think about maybe putting ground cover down instead of trying to establish that as lawn. So those were my main concerns.
So, and have you talked to them since your report went out?
I have not, no.
Okay, so we'll and are they here tonight?
I believe Jeff Kane is here for the applicant.
Yes,
Oh, I see. Oh, is it Jeffrey or Mark?
Jeffrey.
Oh, okay. And then I see somebody else for one. Oh no, sorry, wrong number. I'm going dyslexic here. 120 versus 210. So
It was a long first meeting.
anyway, so are you here to converse about Janet's observations?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, commission members. I'm Jeffrey Kane with the LAL Engineering Group, representing the Edwards on this COC request. We did receive Janet's report. I was talking with Nick, the builder. He was under the impression that he was meeting all the requirements that Janet had spelled out. And when he called us for to go out for the review and survey, it was his impression that he was all set. That's obviously not the case. It was he had the best intentions, but reading over Janet's report, there were things that obviously he missed that we thought were taken care of. Anyway, if we go through one at a time, the big one was the fence. The fence was put in after our survey and report was done. It was done by the owner. The owner did mention to me he went to the office to ask about that fence. He was under the impression that he was okay to put in a fence as long as it was outside of where the hay bales were. I don't know. I wasn't privy to that conversation. He may have missed the part that he still needed commission's permission to do that. But potentially it was going to be approved. I'm not sure how that worked out, but it wasn't his intention to put that in without the commission knowing about it. That fence was put in. The Edwards have been there for just under a year. They do have a dog on the smaller side. They do have 2 children. They do have a small vegetable garden out back. That was put in to deter animals from coming into the yard, particular the coyotes and the deer. They also have the rabbits coming in, eating the lawn. That was a safety issue for them involving the dogs, the children, and obviously the ticks, be it deer ticks or even Lone Stars now that could come in with the small animals. They just wanted to protect a certain area of their yard. They thought they were doing the correct thing by calling the commission first. That's why, again, it wasn't on the survey. It wasn't in mentioned in our report. Our idea would be, if we deal with number 1 and number 2 in Janet's report concurrently here, our idea would be to use that fence in lieu of those bounds that are in place now that are put in flush. I know we've talked about before at this commission about using fences as a delineation for the wetland. I think it may be a bit of a blessing in disguise that the fence was put in. It's obviously a better deterrent for keeping both humans and animals out of the wetland area. It stops landscaping from going back there. It stops the lawn creep that tends to happen over time with lawns adjacent to buffer areas. And we can use the fencing to put the signage on there, the required signage right on it. I think it would be a better deterrent and delineation from that area as opposed to just some bounds that are sticking up 18 inches, 40 feet apart. But that would be our idea. I hope the commission will entertain that. That would take care of both the first 2 issues that Janet had on her report, being the fence and the bound placement. If we keep going beyond that, I don't know if you want to address these one at a time. You want to go through them all first?
Well, we don't have that many, so let's go through them and then we can ask questions.
Okay. The third, first 2 we just talked about. The third item on her report was
It was a sign. So
I had not. Yeah, this was the other wording on the signage. I have not seen, Jen. I did not see the emails that went out to Nick, so I was not sure of that requirement there. We can put that wordage on more signage. I'm not sure if pointing out the no use of pesticides in a 100-foot buffer zone. I'm not sure the logic of it, I guess, is my only question. I'm not sure who can determine, if you're reading a sign, where that 100-foot buffer zone falls on the yard. It's kind of arbitrary, but if the commission requires it, we can modify that signage.
Okay.
Number 4 was not all the areas have been stabilized. The area Janet was talking about is along the, if you're looking at the house from the street, it's on the right side. There is mulch there. It was actually put down with tackifier. The area is stable. It's not eroding into the buffer zone area. There are some plantings in that area as well. There's some pine trees further up. There's a swath of it that's only mulch that right now the Edwards are planning on replanting. It's either going to be additional shrubs, which would provide additional cover, potentially food in the buffer zone, or it will be turf. They haven't quite made that decision yet. As I mentioned, they've only been there for less than a year. But the talk even today was it's going to either be continued turf or they're going to put additional plantings in there. So it won't be left just mulch as it is, but it is stable as it stands today. And I do have pictures of that. And number 5, let me see that one, the infiltration trench on the driveway Jen had mentioned. Again, we're not out there during construction. My understanding, talking to the builder, it was put in. It can be put with turf over the top of it. Those still function in that manner, but we will get confirmation from the builder it was put in. And if need be, we will expose it. That's really up to the commission. Like I said, the drawing showed it was stone only. Again, it does function with turf over the top, but I will get confirmation from the builder that it's correctly installed. And the last item was looking for a new letter. We do believe that we have all the issues were addressed, but obviously if the commission needs a new letter, if it's going to vote to approve that fence and wants some sort of other writing or some sort of wording for another letter, you know, requesting the certificate of compliance again, we'll comply with that, obviously.
So before I let Janet respond, Jeff, we look at engineers as the responsibility they have is to review the notice of the order conditions. And regardless of what the builder tells them, it's up to the engineers to go out and observe, you know, on their own and not take the word of a builder for what's there, and to note any differences there. But you know, that's we view that as part of your stamp when you're giving us a letter that says this is, you know, that everything was done. It can't be based on hearsay from the builder. We need you to observe that it's been done. And that's what we require of all our engineers. And I just want to let you know, the builder doesn't cut it as far as we're concerned. If you're giving us a letter with a stamp on it, you're the person who has looked at this and you're attesting that this work has been done. So I believe you'll need to redo the letter. I believe you'll need to redo the plan to show the fence. And then Janet, why don't you tell us what else you'd like to see there?
Sure. So the question for the commission would be whether or not you would have allowed the fence if the owner, I don't know if the owner had come into the office and talked to Lori, but we didn't receive anything requesting a modification or a change. So I think the commission, if you can decide tonight whether you allow the fence, in general, if we do allow a fence, I think it was within about 25 feet of the wetland, maybe not quite that close, but it was in the 50-foot no disturb. And we usually do require a 6-inch gap at the bottom to allow for some wildlife passage. And this is a chain link fence going right down to the ground. I will say, to be reasonable, this property does back up to a significant wildlife area and corridor. So I'm not sure if this little fence in the backyard really would have any impact on wildlife. But I think for purposes of moving forward, the commission should confirm that the fence is okay.
Well, can I just, we don't have it shown on a plan, so we don't know really where it is. Is that correct?
That's
Okay,
right.
so
Yeah, I mean, I can show you a rough delineation, but I understand the commission will want a survey of it. That's fine, but I do want to clarify, that fence is put on the house side of those 50, on those monuments. So it's beyond the 50-foot of the wetlands. And actually, it provides additional buffer space because it's about 2 or 3 feet house side from those stone bounds that were going to be in place. So it's not within 25 feet. It's beyond 50 feet from the wetlands.
So we need to, as we
buffer.
expect.
Fences are structures, and we have a 70-foot no structure setback, so.
No, I understand that part, right? I understand that part, but the
Well, I
fencing
think-
that was put in, as Janet said, there was also a safety concern. It is a very small portion of
You
the
know,
house.
we get all the, but these are homeowners making up in the builder, making up what they, you know, even though they have a document in front of them saying this is what you need to do. And we have, everybody is required to do that. And I think where LAL should have picked up on was that, you know, if you reviewed the order conditions and the bounds, for example, weren't 18 inches up, you would note that on the plan and say they're not 18 inches up. You know, they're in the right location, but they're not per spec. And that's, you know, we expect that's the type of report that we expect to get from engineers.
That's fair, and as far as the bounds go, that's fair, John, that's completely fair. So that said, the fence wasn't there, so.
Yeah, no, I know that puts you at a disadvantage, but right at the moment, we're we love homeowners, we are homeowners. But the fact of the matter is, you can't just get, in the middle of things because you're concerned about your children, as you just saw the long meeting we had before. Somebody who's concerned about their children, but we can't just let people do what they want. In this case, it sounds a little bit more benign. We'd like to see where the fence actually is, and then we can, and where it is relative to the wetlands with, measurements shown on the plan, noting where its distance is from the bounds. So we expect to see the bounds on the plan. Would be very helpful as making that determination. So we're not saying no, we just need to see it.
No, that's completely fair as well. So if that's going to be the outstanding issue, that can absolutely be taken care of. I just want to see with the other ones, again, as far as the exposed area that has mulch on it. I mean, that's not unstabilized soil. That's why we did not call it out as that. If it's the only issue.
How far is that from the wetland?
So
that's beyond the 50. It's beyond where the fence goes up to a flat area. So it's probably between 50 and 60 feet.
And what's the elevation drop?
Top
to bottom?
3 to 4 feet.
Okay. Janet, you had a question?
yeah, so just to work through, I think if the commission allows the fence, then I agree that having to redo the permanent bounds doesn't make sense. And then I think it's fine to put the signage on the fence if it's allowed. The lawn areas I was talking about are predominantly in the backyard, not on the right side. And when I was there maybe 2 weeks ago, it was dirt. There was, and it looked to me like someone had tried to plant grass, but it really had not come up. But this was not on the right side of the property. This was in the back. I don't know, Jeff, when were you last on the property?
Well, I wanted to make sure we were out there before. I did went out today to take pictures. So, I mean, maybe it's something was happened in the interim at the same time as the fence. But right now it's mulch, Janet. I don't know if you were out there a while ago. In the time that we're getting this survey done with the fence, if you want to take another peek out there, I'm happy to meet you as well, just to make sure this item's taken care of.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe that makes sense that you and Nick and myself, we can just talk, follow up.
Yeah, because I don't think there's a lot here. I think the fence is the big issue. If you wanted to go through and force the issue with all these other points, again, that would be fine. I just think the fence is the bigger issue, and that will take care of a lot of this.
Well, I think the infiltration, I mean, I think the idea of meeting out there is great. You'll cover all your bases in one short meeting and then be able to respond, and we can have you, depending on your turnaround, we can have you in front of us for the next meeting.
Yeah, the only thing I do want to throw up before we get going is just a little bit of the talk of the fence. I mean, the whole idea is to exclude any animal from this backyard, because animals are going to be coming into turf grass. There's no buffer help that these animals are going to get beyond eating the vegetable garden or dropping ticks into their yard. So the idea is not to allow a gap under the fence. This is, and you'll see it on the plan, this is a large property, and the area that's actually excluded, as Janet had alluded to, is very small in comparison. And it's an area that's all turf grass. So though you will allow birds to get in there, the idea is not to allow animals like rabbits or groundhogs or things like that to come and go back and forth and drop ticks in the yard. It is a safety issue. That's what this is about. So,
and I think it's a value you can make that case, and we review it as, would we allow it? And generally, depending where the distance is, we're pretty flexible with fences.
Sure.
And then we'll those are interesting points, and and being able to have a plan in front of us, if you have a smaller scale plan, so we can see more of the lot, and what's behind it, or even color rendering of a Google satellite photo or something, all that can help.
Yeah, and I can show you one now if it helps, or you just want to wait for the next time we come.
No, I think we want to see where the fence is located, in reality. Is there, Janet, anything else concerning this?
No, I think that's it. So,
Okay.
so Jeff, I'll reach out to you and Nick, and we'll set up a time to meet.
Sounds perfect. Great.
Okay, great. Thank you much.
All right,
Um,
a motion to continue or?
Yeah, please send a quick email to Lori.
Mhm.
And just a quick thing. So also, I would doubt Lori's not prone to telling people that that they can put fences in. Period. You know, so she just doesn't.
I was
she
not
doesn't-
there, John. I don't
No,
even
no,
want
no.
to.
I know. I'm just letting you for feedback to go back to them. It is unlikely, or maybe they spoke to a different office, but no, Lori doesn't have a history of doing that.
And when homeowners come in, this is not their realm, nor do I expect it to be. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure who he asked, how he asked, and what he got for response. So
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
put out that was,
Yeah, no, we're not going to hold it against anybody. I just want to, stick up for Lori because I just know.
No, of course,
yeah. And
I
that
wouldn't
we
think
just,
so either.
yeah, so anyway, okay, then if you request a continuance, and we'll see you the next time. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Request to continue, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and I'll get the email out. All right, thanks, guys.
thanks. Okay. Night.
Okay.
Let's see. 120 Center Street. Janet, why don't you fill us in on that, please?
Okay, so this is an easy one. This was just installation of a driveway, a relocation of a driveway closer to a wetland to address site issues. Not all the work was done, but the work that was done is in full compliance, and I recommend approval with the four permanent special conditions outlined in my report.
Okay. And I will entertain a motion to grant that certificate of compliance.
Yes, move to grant a certificate of compliance for 120 Center Street with the condition that of the with inclusion of the 4 conditions in Jen's report.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Amy?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So thank you for your patience. And congratulations.
Very much. Next time we'll go first. How's that? No, okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
An easy one, like you said. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Night. Okay, next up, we have a discussion regarding 31 Springdale. And let's see, Janet, where do we stand here? Have you received anything from Goddard?
Haven't received anything from Goddard. We received a revised plan, RDA plan from the owner, Will Mitchell, who's on the call, who's on the meeting. And I would like to talk about that a little bit. And then the separate issue is compliance with the enforcement order. So the RDA was pretty straightforward. It was to expand the driveway, resurface the driveway, do some retaining wall foundation work. The commission previously gave the property owner permission to do almost all of that work because of scheduling with the contractor. But the turnaround driveway, I'm recommending that you not approve. The property owner revised his plan to show that there will be no circular driveway. My only follow-up is it's all dirt now, it's disturbed. So I would like to see a planting plan from you, Will, as to how you're going to restore the natural, the area you've disturbed that's not going to be driveway. If we could get a planting plan with native plants. And then also, I just wanted your feedback on hard topping your driveway and what's shown on the plan. Does that expand the driveway at all? Or are you just going to resurface what had been there?
Unmute, Will, thanks.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, no, we just pulled the asphalt up and we're putting gravel down in the same footprint.
Oh, you're going to gravel, not.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And it's.
No, it's, yeah, just gravel.
Okay, that's good. That's pervious. That's good.
No, gravel is impervious.
Mhm.
Gravel is not pervious, Janet. Stone is pervious, gravel is not.
Mhm. So what, are you looking at like crushed bluestone type of thing, Will? Are you gonna treat it at all, or is it just gonna be gravel can be just dirt with some stones in it, or
That's what it is.
or sometimes when people respond, say that they're outlining gravel, what they're thinking is a crushed stone type of thing that's
Yeah.
gonna compact
Yeah.
down. Is that what you're looking to do?
It'll be, a sub base with, that's compacted with crushed bluestone on top.
Okay.
I mean, I think if we're talking about relatives here, I think anything is more pervious than asphalt, right? So,
I think we like asphalt.
regardless
Well,
of
it's
how we look at it, it's an
the
improvement.
irony is we've gone through a learning curve over the years, and we found that actually controlled runoff via asphalt is typically works
Preferable.
better, but we're not necessarily going to deny that because it's a pretty small driveway. But just to let you know, generally find things are sloped in a certain way, maybe put an infiltration trench of crushed stone 12 inches wide along the side going towards the stream, the pond there. Those sorts of things remedy that better with asphalt than because gravel tends to get pockmarked and plow damaged and things like that. Crushed bluestone is going to be a little bit more durable. Does it grade down from the house towards the street, or is it pretty much dead level?
No, it grades kind of towards like the middle of the driveway. We are going to have kind of a low spot there, but it's not that big of an area. So, and it doesn't really get runoff from anywhere else.
And would you have gutters over there? Where do they go?
They put out in the front of the house on the street.
Okay. So Janet, what else were you saying? Oh, so I guess the concern we have, when was the revised RDA sent out, Janet?
I'm trying to think. I think that was submitted.
Was it a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
So was it, did it come from you, Will?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen it yet. I'm just gonna see if I can pull it up here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that got sent out by Lori to everyone.
Oh, well, that's, yeah.
She did on the 14th.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
I just found it.
So I'd suggest, Will, that I'll reach out to you and maybe we can meet briefly on the site and just go over sort of the loose ends on this. Okay, great. And then the other issue is the enforcement order for a substantial amount of disturbance in the buffer and also in some resource areas. The commission had issued an enforcement order that was back in March. And the compliance deadline was in 3 weeks, so that would have been April 17th. We had a brief update from Goddard, and I had thought we were going to expect the restoration plan by last week, so I'm not sure what the update is on that.
Mitch is, I think, here on the call. Talk about that.
Yep. So this is Mitch with Goddard Consulting. So, Janet, I thoroughly apologize for not being able to provide that report to you. I was thinking it would probably be best if I visit the site within the next couple of days, just to refresh pictures, get fresh eyes on the site, because it has been quite a while now since I visited the site to do the initial impact assessment. So just to get some fresh eyes on the site instead of providing a report that's quite outdated for you guys, figure I'll get something that's more recent, shows exactly what's out there right now, and then we can come up with a plan for what to do moving forward. So again, I apologize, Janet, and my plan is to provide a report to you by September 5th, which is the 1 week before your September 11th deadline, if that's all right with you guys.
Janet, to
Yes. that may be, and I may need more than just a week to review that. That's probably gonna be a substantial restoration plan. And I would think we may want to bring in a third party to review this.
Well, so am I, Mitch, are you saying you'll have the restoration plan ready in a week? Or are you basically saying you'll have updates for discussion within a week?
So I can have a restoration plan put together. I basically have my impact assessment put together just with outdated photos at this point. And before I submit that to the commission, I'd rather get some up-to-date eyes on the site just to make sure things haven't changed. And then I can put together the restoration plan for you guys and then have that presented at the September 11th hearing.
Okay, so it seems to me, Janet, I'm willing for us to take a look at that and then make a decision whether we need an expert or not. And then, you know, at least it'll be the first thing we have in front of us for quite some time. And Will, I haven't, for some reason, on the 14th, I'm not coming up with whatever was sent out, but, oh, you know what? Because I'm looking at under your name. Excuse me. But that space where the return, the right side of the driveway was going to go in, you know, through the stone wall there. I think the discussion earlier was you were going to basically connect those stone piers with a fence. Is that correct? And
yeah, I think either a fence or just you know, maybe a gate that is inoperable. I think that's what I put in the plan.
And is it, what's the left to right? What's the distance on that?
Between the pillars.
Yeah.
14 feet.
Oh, okay. So a gate, 14-foot gate, kind of makes it seem like it's still kind of a driveway.
Yeah, but I mean, there's going to be plantings there, so I don't, you know, it's like anyone's going to mistake that.
Okay, and did you draw in any plantings on your you know, on your
no, I mean I you know, made that plan based on my conversation with Janet, which just talked about showing the removal of that turnaround and some sort of a structure in between the pillars.
Okay. Okay, so we're kicking this down the road again, but we have a definite promise from Goddard that they'll be ready for the 11th. Commissioners or Janet, anyone have any questions?
And just a reminder that the submittal deadline on the 5th is we need 2 hard copies by 12 noon in the office.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll see you then.
All right, great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Let's see. Then, Janet, we have an extension request for 159 Claybrook.
Yes. So there's I don't think there's an issue with approving the extension request. Mark Arnold is here, I believe, for the owner. But as you may recall, this was site work in the riverfront to make a more natural pool patio area, remove invasives, do some native plantings, and stabilize the vegetation on the bank area around this property. I had talked to Mark earlier today and also the landscape architect. We have not been getting monthly progress reports. And we are owed a number of reports for the invasive management work and also the native plant restoration work. So Mark's aware of that. And the question would be, do we want those reports before we approve the extension? I think we can go ahead and approve the extension with the understanding that we'll get those reports as soon as possible.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. So I'll entertain a motion to, how long an extension?
Yeah.
1 year.
Okay.
Move to grant a 1-year extension for the order of conditions at 159 Claybrook Road.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Amy? Anna?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, great.
Thank you so much. We'll get those reports to Janet right away.
Okay, yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you a lot, Mark. So, okay, thank you.
And
let's-
congratulations, Mark. I think you just had a baby, so congratulations.
Oh,
Correct. Thank you so much. Yep, he's doing good.
Oh,
sweet.
good.
Okay, great. Okay, bye-bye.
Get some sleep.
Yeah, right. Let's see. So we're moving on to our 8:30 discussion. For land management work group update. Oh no, excuse me. I'm missing. There was an emergency permit extension for the continuing monitoring at the Chestnut Street Bridge. And Janet, how long was that for?
I think it's a maximum of 60 or 90
Okay.
days. I can't.
So they're basically, it's just a continuation of the spill that was down at the Chestnut Street Bridge, and they have things together, and they knew this deadline was coming up, so they're asking for an extension for their emergency monitoring. I'll entertain a motion for such.
Yes, move to grant an emergency extension for the permit for the continuous monitoring of the Chestnut Street Bridge.
For up to 90 days?
Yeah, for 90 days.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor? Amy? Anna?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Now, land management update.
Yes, so see, we had our meeting last week. The short things are we're planning this year on concentrating on cleaning up the trails in Wild Woods. So we're going to spend some time on our meetings doing open street map to make sure the data is good, figure out what's unlabeled. We have a question about renaming the Good Woman Trail, if no one minds. It seems like in 2024, it maybe should have a different name, but it's not exactly ours.
I don't know.
Just a little.
Why are there no more good women?
But it's been such a Norfolk Hunt Club
Okay.
legacy. But we can talk, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
So then is it
Go ahead.
paternalistic to say that?
All the names of all those trails are Hunt Club initiated
okay.
because they use them to know where the blowdowns are, et cetera, or what route they're taking. So I think you should work with Sarah on.
Yeah, and you and I can have an offline about going
I
over.
I was just wondering if it was paternalistic to grandfather that name. Just what I did there.
Well, it's funny.
But,
when I first started riding those trails, I always called it the Good Ladies Trail. And then I rode out with Rennie Roberts, who's one of our past masters, who was like, it's the Good Women's Trail, not a lady. Like, I mean, she like completely like it's just
okay, it's
Well,
a thing.
okay,
Yeah,
so-
we'll catch up.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Talk among yourselves. Okay.
Yes.
That's good. We're working on figuring out the grant requirements for maybe asking the cultural council to fund an education thing, geologist. That could be fun. So we're getting organized on that
great.
idea. That'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had some interest for people who want to help with trails. So we're potentially wanting to recruit people, so we may come back with that. It would be hilarious to me if we could recruit for trails and not Concom, but we'll take volunteers where they want to help.
Well, maybe once you get a few people on trails, they'll want to go wider. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's sort of the overall on trails. The interesting news is, did anyone see the Springdale Meadow RFP from the collective? Correct me if I've got them wrong. But the folks who were the Mass Audubon Extension have spun off and done their own consulting. So we're interested in that. It seems good to us, but we'd love to get everyone's take on that RFP.
No, I didn't see that.
That
So-
was 6950 total is what they thought they were thinking of.
Yes, and they've gone over the
And-
file, so it's
Yeah.
taking into account, they're not surveying, they're not trying to redo wetlands.
And Lori, do you recall what we spent on the Audubon management plan from, for the other two parcels?
I know it was less than 5.
I was gonna say it was like 5 for each. It was like.
Yeah, it was right. It was just under 5, I think.
That's what I
That was
thought.
the-
Right.
But that was what, 6 to 8 years ago,
Oh, boy.
maybe?
So we
was
did
a
the
while.
Audubon for
At least 6.
Dedham,
maybe 8.
and then we did the Audubon for Valley Farm. Was that the 2 that we did?
Correct. Right.
Right, and they each were under 5, so I,
Mhm.
And then this is 41 Springdale, or is it yeah.
46.
Um,
46.
What? I'm sorry, 46, 31 across the street, or, yeah. Yeah, so I just saw it, I opened it quickly on my phone, so I didn't digest the whole thing. But if everyone could take a look at that, and we can discuss it at our next meeting. Was there anything you found particularly salient about it, Anna?
It seemed really solid to me. It seemed like it took into account mostly focusing on habitat and usage that we could do and invasive plant management, that just stuff we've talked about. And we actually got a request from Kay Peterson to do more about that in general. So it seemed like a good holistic approach for this, and sort of very normal for this property, but I don't know, I'd love to get other people's input.
Well, why don't we review it, and then some things off the top of my head, which may come as part of that and may adjust that price, would be specifying a few areas of interest, such as the vernal pool, or active trails management, or things of that nature. Is it DLCT that abuts it on the right behind the Powers House? Okay.
Yes.
And is that just a open handshake deal in terms of people who wander from one property to the other? There's nothing
Well,
for
there's trails in the DLCT land, and it's all trails on all the DLCT properties are open to the public.
Okay, good.
So it doesn't need to be handshakes.
So
no, it's
okay.
just, yeah.
A hands off, a very Yankee.
I mean,
It's been there. Okay.
it's a policy.
Okay. Okay. So why don't we be prepared
Mission.
to discuss that if we can go, if that can go on the 11th agenda, please, Lori. Anything else, Anna?
We would love to get this sort of organized and decided on next time or the time after. So yeah, if you've questions, like send them to me and we can batch them up and talk about them.
Yeah. And and then what's their time frame after approval?
Pretty fast. Let me see if I've got it.
I actually spoke to
Notes.
Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's roughly a 6-month process, but their site work is up front. So it would be really good if we could get approval on September 11th. I'm going to try to get a couple other quotes. Quite a few of the other firms thought this was too small. So, and under the state procurement law, if it's under 10,000, we actually don't have to get formal quotes. You just best practice to get, the most qualified, reasonable bid. I clearly think this is pretty reasonable. The other piece on this, because we have a couple direct abutters, unlike Dedham and even Valley Farm, we're going to need to do some outreach and coordination also with DLCT, and then also look at the rail trail and how that could impact the property. So
absolutely
more public and communication outreach in this than the other. Actually, there was none at all. We didn't consult anyone else for the other 2 properties.
No, I think that's very good, especially the way it ties in with the rail trail as well. Okey-doke. Anything else, Anna?
That's it.
Oh, excellent. Well, still, it's you know, we're moving forward. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Anna.
Okay, then agents report.
Okay, so I had hoped to ask Paul for an update on 12 and 14 Miller Hill. We haven't gotten anything in writing, but I know there's work being done out there, quite a bit of work. So I will follow up with the consultants and Goddard to make sure we have something in writing in terms of where that is.
Okay.
The next issue was a follow-up on whether we can use online technology to help us with our meeting minutes backlog. I had a conversation, I was in another meeting with the town administrator, and we had a conversation. He suggested I talk to the assistant town administrator, Chris Costello, who I did talk to. And I had thought our conversation was that we could go ahead and try some things out. That there would be no harm in doing that, but his most recent email indicated he was sort of discouraging us from using AI because he had found it to be inaccurate.
Yeah, I saw that today.
Yeah. So I had sent Lori a just a quick note because I was going to run late today, and I don't. So obviously you didn't have an earlier meeting on this. I saw that from Chris, and I never viewed it as being the definitive product. I viewed it as a way to create a rubric that then would be checked by Lori for accuracy, but would avoid the drudgery of having to type 100% of this out. I don't know if people did everyone see Chris's response?
Yeah.
So he voiced the concern as if we were just going to, turn everything over to AI and believe whatever it tells us. And I think we've all been discussing just something that gives us some pros, being not pros and cons, but PROSE that just takes the drudgery and then gets checked.
No, it's almost like that Lori has a almost her own secretary to do the minutes, and then she goes through and then she revises them.
Right.
Well, I think at the very least,
thinking.
it's worth checking out to see how close it comes. And I didn't hear a direct prohibition from Chris. He just outlined what his experience had been. Lori, you've had some discussions within the townhouse. Have you picked up any other information beyond what we just discussed?
Well, I talked to Chris few months back, and that they're not in favor of it. And Chris has gone now on vacation for a bit, but he did tell me that if anybody has any questions about his email or their feeling about AI, they can talk to Mike Blanchard. He's up to speed on the conversations.
Okay.
So.
Because it seems I get the sense we're pretty much on the same page. We're not going to trust it. We just want to see if it takes care of some of the drudgery that thing can be amended and reviewed. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean it's more like we're looking for an IA to do the stenographer-ness of it. You know what I mean?
There's also the thing is, fine, if you don't want us to do that, then get us a part-time person who can bring us up to speed. But if you can't
who's
do
going to
that,
be our part-time,
the part-time person would basically
minute
do
per-
the AI. Yeah, the part-time person would do the AI, be a analog AI person, because she wasn't there and she's just coming in,
Right.
trying to do all that. And you had your hand, Laurie, what was?
I do have an update on that. HR actually hired someone. She's going to be starting in September, and she is prepared to do the backlog for the Board of Selectmen and for conservation, as you all approved in May. And she does this. She does minutes from recordings. She doesn't use AI, but she takes the recordings and she does a summary. She does
Why
minutes from the
Okay, so
recording.
that's
Great.
it kind of makes it moot, but not really, because I know we're still curious about the, the AI component, but let's.
Well, that's at least for the backlog while you're all,
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
kind of.
Well, no,
I will say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Uh, when we first started talking about this, first I talked to Chris. Then I talked to our IT consultant and asked him about, I said, the ChatGPT, the last one that was sent, and he did tell me, this is what he said, that the summary will always be there, like out there somewhere, to be shared by the AI that you're using. In other words, I can take the summary and I can, sort of change it to fine tune it, whatever, to be the final minutes version. But that original summary can be seen by, anybody. So
Sure.
I don't know if that gives anyone an uneasy feeling or
It's a public
like,
document.
I don't really, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
go
but
ahead.
it could be a public document that's wrong. That's what
Well,
we're
yeah, that's
saying
what I
here.
mean.
Good.
Yeah,
Because
and so
sometimes
that
it mishears things, I think, or
mhm.
that's why you have to revise it, a human has to revise it, but
Right.
he said that it would be out there, like if somebody said, to AI, show me an example of, town in Massachusetts conservation minutes, that AI original summary
Could be
could
out
be
there.
brought up.
But
If
it-
it's
without
wrong,
errors. Yep.
You
So
know.
But it's
Anna,
also not the one that's being posted
yeah, it's not the
on,
official one.
Correct.
Yeah.
on the
So
web.
it's
So,
yeah, so it's
somebody can't use it as a legal document to
right.
dispute
So
something.
Annie, you were gonna mention something about that?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, was he talking about it as the summary as a ChatGPT thing, like they do this, they store the files, or were they talking about it as like an open meeting law thing? And it
A
sounds like it was maybe
ChatGPT thing.
okay.
Yeah. That,
It's just
and
that-
that's what the IT person, he
Yeah.
just mentioned that to me. The other thing is my Zoom has parameters that are set for all of us. And I don't even think that I can incorporate AI. Well, first they've sort of implied that we're not gonna use that, so I wouldn't just do it, on my own.
And they may have locked it- they may have-
Somebody I think is tonight though, because I got a little message that it was being.
No,
transcribed.
it automatically launched.
Yeah. See, I don't
and so
have that.
I turned it off right away.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's not on.
I
Oh,
didn't know what
interesting.
to do. I hit OK because it was going across the middle of my screen. So
It
I don't
seems
know
to me
what's gonna
so.
happen.
No, I
Everything is evolving except for the analog component, which it has evolved. Somebody's been hired. The whole point of the AI was because we weren't getting anybody. So I think we have a little bit of breathing space to continue reviewing AI. But absolutely, we want to cooperate with the person who comes on board in September and try to catch up on this stuff so that we can get in compliance with things. So I think we have the best of 1.5 worlds.
Yeah, I didn't mean to turn it on. It launched itself automatically because we had it on last time.
No, I mean, I'm just saying I saw that it was on, so I know I can't turn it on because we have settings that are set up by the person in charge of everybody's Zoom. I'm not sure.
So
who
Amy,
it is.
so as a not on a town Zoom account, I mean, we go into it via the link and so forth, but yours came on just automatically.
Yeah, you want me to turn it on and see?
Yeah, see what it does, because
what it does for
it's
this last
interesting.
little bit.
Whereas Lori's account could be locked out by the town by design, but that's interesting. That the fact that basically anybody who was a meeting participant tonight could have turned maybe.
Well, I was thinking of that when I saw it across the screen. I was thinking that other people who have it enabled can do a transcript.
No, what I like is what's coming down the pike is AI is they would take that unvetted one, if it were a security breach or somehow got out there, incorporated into other examples and be done in a numerous cases like that, and created something that's completely fictitious as it as it goes into its language, its learning module, and it seems to be there's a little bit more work that needs to be done there. So is yours on, Amy?
I don't know.
No,
It doesn't
okay.
seem like it's.
Well, we'll find that. Yeah, next time you the next meeting when you log on, we'll see what happens. Okay, then well, good. The good news here is we have a person. So fingers crossed that that continues. Next up, Janet.
So just to follow up on the minutes taker, at the last discussion, I don't know if it was John or Lori, but indicated we didn't have funding for this person. So did Board of Selectmen agree to pay to have this person work with us?
No, I think when John and I discussed it, we talked about using some of the wetlands protection funds that are allowed to be used.
Because we got a
The
potential budget.
WPA account.
Yeah, we got a
Kathy's
potential.
getting me, the accountant is getting me a balance, so I know what we have in there. But you and I had talked about it and you thought it was worth, at least getting caught up on the backlog and.
Yeah, when we spoke to HR, and she was familiar with what the costs had been for the other boards. And then, yeah, that was all part of that conversation. And the only thing we didn't know was what our WPA budget exists at currently. But we know that we have enough to get started, and we need to, so that's where it appears to be. And then we can marshal forces, to continue if it's, we can split budgets or whatnot. We'll see how that works internally. Right at the moment, we just needed a body. And we can cover that for a while with WPA. Any other questions concerning that?
So I just have a request. I'm wondering if, based on our situation with 29 Saddle Ridge, which I'm hoping is going to go forward smoothly. I think it was handled well tonight, but we could have, it could draw out again. If we could make the May 22nd, 2024 minutes a priority to have written, just so we have that documentation, because we're relying on that discussion. And
I think that's a good point. So why don't we, if you just keep that in mind as soon as that person comes on board, Lori, to have them start with that.
Okay. Let's see. I was contacted by someone from DCR who had an issue over at the Medfield Charles River Reservation Trail. There's an area, it's a stream crossing, a culvert had failed or was plugged up.
Yeah.
Do you know that area?
I do. I think if I'm correct, it's by MedState. It's MedState Hospital.
Yes, that's right. And there's like a big piece of concrete over.
Yes. So I was contacted with my other hat on. So, but Janet, go ahead with yours and we can.
Yes. So
how are you going to finish it?
So it's really dangerous right now. Like people,
very dangerous.
Or someone on a horse, if they didn't see this, you could really get hurt.
Yes.
So we have a group of volunteers and some money pledged by the Norfolk Hunt Club, which is probably your input, Sarah. And they want to come up with a short-term solution until they can really have a proper design and properly engineered. So I've scheduled a site meeting.
It's not our land, it's state forest.
No,
Right.
but Amy, so what's happening is that DCR is so backed up.
Right.
That they want, so even
They
at the
want
state
us
level,
to do this?
they want extra help to get this done.
So they actually are just approaching us as the Concom for permitting purposes.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Over.
I see.
Right.
So this is
Yep.
just an RDA.
This is, but it's
Emergency
more
RDA.
emergency RDA.
Yeah.
It's more
And
an
is this-
emergency RDA.
Is
Because
this
I was
so?
like,
But is it in Dover or is it in Medfield?
I'm
It's
not
in-
really quite sure, John, that's,
the state forest, a portion of that is in Dover. This is definitely
Yeah.
in,
okay.
I was just wondering, is there any participation from Medfield on this or? Or is it just?
no, not the Medfield Concom because it's in Dover, so we have jurisdiction.
Oh, it is. So, well, that was
So
my,
it's,
so
it's,
it's
so
actually in,
it's behind the soccer fields and the DS soccer fields. I
yeah.
know exactly where it is. Yeah.
So you go through the first practice field.
Mhm.
And, so you go through the main fields, then you go to the first practice field, and then is it beyond that? It must be.
Well, so I look at it from like, if you're going down, I look at it from the opposite way where you're going down Harding to Hospital Road
Yeah.
and you go down up over the lookout
Mm-hmm.
behind, it's over there, and then DS Fields are over to the right. If that
Right.
makes sense to you. I mean, I always
Okay.
look at it from horseback, not from
Yeah,
humans.
and I look at it from going through the fields.
Right,
Okay, so anyway,
exactly.
and had there been, I don't know where the concrete from, I remember there having been, weren't there wood?
It happened last year, and we, as a hunt club, were able to kind of avoid it a little bit because we kind of made our own trail.
Mhm.
But it's now, it needs to be fixed.
But
DC
are there wood crossings, along the way there, back there?
I think at this point, no, I think it's that dangerous. I mean,
And
it
was
needs,
this, was this part of a concrete crossing that is deteriorated, or where'd the concrete come from?
it's a crusher run. Soil, it's basically dirt with some crusher run on it.
right.
Oh, so it wasn't actually a poured concrete or a panel or something like that. It's just everything has eroded.
Yes.
Yes, the trail's eroded, but there is this weird concrete slab over the culvert that is still there.
Okay. And so what's the plan, or what is it they would like us to do on this?
First step is, and I'll send out a reminder to people and let you know where to park. We've set up a site meeting for Friday, September 20th at 1 p.m. So
Mhm.
DC would like to meet us out there, get our feedback. And then they'll come up with a proposal to present before us. This is at least an RDA, if not an NOI.
So it will be DCR that's coming in front of us?
That's right.
Oh, they will. Okay, so they have the time to do that, but not to do the
But
implementation.
Janet, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the Norfolk Hunt Club was willing to take care of this, like pay for it in honor of the DCR. Or like,
That's what he said. He said that, I guess the Friends of Bay Circuit Trail or something.
yes,
Mhm.
yep.
Um,
And the Norfolk Hunt Club would pay for this because DCR is so backed up.
Okay,
Yes.
so, and then the site visit DCR will give us an idea of what kind of repair they would like to see. Is that, so we're not making it up. They'll have some input on that.
That's
I
right.
guess, right?
Okay.
I mean.
Okay, yeah, no,
again,
that
okay.
makes sense. Okay, so how would you access that if anyone wants to go to the site visit? That's the 20th at 1 o'clock, is that right?
I would think what you would do, Janet, I'm sorry to interrupt, but from my understanding is you would drive down Hospital Road, go down to the right of where the trailer is, follow all the way down to like the lookout. And then it's right there.
It's about a
It's
10
not, it's not on the main trail that's along the river.
No, it's,
I don't know. It's,
Okay.
I mean,
Only-
Janet, again, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but this is what I think where it is. Because I
Yeah.
see it from horseback, so I'm just trying to envision how to get there, not on horseback.
right, this stream
Right,
widens.
so do you,
and-
on Hospital Road, do you go past the buildings and then turn right on the Charles River Trailhead? Would that be it?
Kevin from DCR was gonna send me a map exactly where we should park.
Okay, that's all we need. Okay.
Oh, wait,
Great.
exactly. Perfect.
What,
Okey-doke.
what time is the site walk?
On the 20th at 1 p.m.
Awesome.
And I'll send out a reminder.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, the planning board is moving forward with their MBTA bylaw. There was a housing task force this afternoon that Anna and I attended. The main issue is we have to come up with one or more sites that would allow for a total of 120 housing units. And so that is how we determine where those sites are and what criteria is used is going to be a big part of that. So we'll keep you posted on that. There's going to be quite an educational effort, but I just wanted to let people know that the planning board and the housing task force are committed to, protecting open space, wetlands, natural resources. That
I'm confused. I thought that this law had to do with towns that have direct access to.
There's a component for towns that are adjacent. And they get the amount required is half of towns that actually have it. So basically because of Needham, you're looking at that. And Janet, does it have to be within a certain distance from a public transportation access?
No,
not for us.
So it can be anywhere in the town?
Yes.
And is that predominantly for private property? For development? I mean, they're not looking for towns to develop stuff like this. I thought they were just looking for zoning overlays that would allow that.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And then I think one of the most recent discussions is dealing with towns that have neither water nor septic. That seems to be something that they hadn't really considered, so that they're now looking to address that.
Right. But there are some protections.
There's only two of us.
There's something called a compliance model that you plug in your site and it tells you if it meets the criteria or not. And we were told today at the meeting by a housing specialist that, wetlands and open space, if it's conservation land, are excluded from being chosen as a development site. So that's the good news. That's true.
But is it?
Well, they just eliminated almost all of Dover because there's wetlands and I think you're gonna have to put all 170 units on my land because I'm the only one that doesn't have wetlands on property.
Well, a boon for you. Yeah.
Well, but I'm about to have a CR, so.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
It'll get me to put it on real fast.
So and so my assumption is that generally this is like in other towns, it's been a zoning overlay. And then it's up to a private property owner and a developer to be able to use land within that overlay. And then they have to address all those concerns. Is that the gist of it?
That's right. As the town decides what areas they think are appropriate, it's not our job to figure out, can you get water? Can you get sewer? So it's just a big picture approach. But
okay, that's a start.
I guess 93 Dedham, which is a 4-acre parcel that has one home on it right now, that was just bought by Oregon apparently. And that people were saying, hey, we could identify that as a site. 4 acres with a dense development could be, could take on quite a bit of housing. So there are still some parcels out there.
It will be interesting because I'm thinking I missed the Red Robin discussion, but they had town water. I'm not sure, does Dedham have town water? Or Dover Colonial, whatever it is now.
Dedham has MWRA.
Dedham Street does?
Oh, Dedham Street. Sorry, I thought you meant the town.
No, Janet was referring to a 4-acre parcel on Dedham Street. And I don't know if
he's got it listed for sale.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. It'd be too. He wants to develop stuff immediately. This isn't going to happen for a while, so I'm sure he'll want to put a single family on there or something. I was thinking more on Dedham Street because it's closer to Needham. If they have access to water, because that's really what's going to support any level of density. And so, part of this is we're supposed to come up with with options and things of that nature. But it also, I just read last week that the state is starting to recognize that they have some towns that are within these districts that don't have water and sewer, so that forcing them to do this may not be practicable. So I think it's all a series of parallel tracks that we'll be going down.
And
I was
the, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
the
No, go
plan
ahead.
is to bring a bylaw to a fall special town meeting next year.
So,
And John, and the task force was talking about trying to bring in a number of friendly developers just to hear your feedback on potential site selection. So Robin Hunter might be reaching out to you to see if you'd be willing to come to a couple meetings and give some feedback.
Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking if I glibly, if I had known of one, I already would have developed it. But yeah.
Speaking of parallel tracks,
Rail trail?
they took some out of the crossing at Hunt Drive.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they're
Really?
starting on the rail trail.
Yeah, it was big news over on the Hunt Drive.
Oh my goodness, I've been like, it's been huge.
I thought it was all just for studying. I didn't think they were actually doing anything yet.
The policeman who was monitoring it said, "Oh no, the rail trail's going forward."
Holy wow!
Oh, I didn't hear
so
that. But,
quiet.
That's what he said.
I cut through there every day, and I was like, "What's going on?"
They're just.
And my teeth are rattling a lot less because I drive.
I think they're just trying to keep from having to repave when the rail trail finally happens. They took the rails out they took the rails out in the center of town too, a long time ago when they repaved that. And they were just repaving Hunt Drive, right?
Oh, were they?
Hunt Drive.
Oh, they're
No?
not? Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
Well, they've been repaving a bunch
They
of
put a
different
patch
streets.
over it.
Well, maybe they just had some extra asphalt and decided to do that one because they repaved Bridge Street and Wild Way.
Off of Glen Street.
But Amy, those were major. They were paving all the streets. This is just like a strip.
No, I know, but I'm saying is that they had the Tarvia trucks here. Maybe they just took an opportunity.
They also had to pull up the tracks and dig it out. I mean, it was not.
Yeah, it's a little more there.
Or maybe more than just dropping some.
Or maybe it was a guy who was just paving driveways in the area and said, "Look,
and not to talk about how horrible, but whoever paved Springdale, which is our town highway,
it's terrible.
Job. It's horrible.
Yeah, I
mean, they haven't even put the yellow lines on yet because they know how bad it is.
Well, they have to smooth it out. It is really bumpy. I just drove my trailer down it the last couple this afternoon, and I was just like, did I get a flat tire?
No, I was wondering. Wow. I would be the same way, Amy, if I had my truck and trailer. It's awful.
Yeah, no, especially
is it
going
maybe just a base coat?
Yeah, it could be, although usually base coats are pretty smooth.
No.
So we'll
No, it's not.
I don't know. It's worse going towards town than it is coming away from town. Coming away from town.
Well, that makes sense.
Almost okay. But the
Doverites don't want people from outside coming into Dover.
No, not coming into. I'm just going from Farm Street to Dover Center. I'm in Dover. I'm from Dover.
All right. So I mean, I know we're still being recorded, but and I apologize. Did I miss a site visit at 29 Saddle Ridge, or did we do a site?
No,
I think we should do one.
Well, the pictures that we've had all along, and Janet or I can resend some. It's basically it's a backyard with a hole in it. There's not much, yeah. But
I mean, I didn't want to say that tonight, but it's kind of like, because it was a discussion, but it's like at some point I have no problem like all of us doing a site visit and being like, okay, you bought a piece of property that has a pond in it and you have
You
two kids,
have little
two young kids.
Yeah.
So like,
So I think that it's not a bad idea. So I was surprised that they were willing to do a turnaround in relatively quick time for this, for the finishing up the enforcement order in the first place, which is delineating things. And the idea that they would come forward with a plan that is almost a, at least RDA type of plan, so that it gives us a better idea of where things are and what they might want to do. I think once we get that in front of us, I think setting up a site visit, absolutely.
I have no problem. Like I almost said that tonight. Like, can we just see
Yeah.
a site? But then I was like, oh, okay.
No,
But,
I think part of
I had
mean,
the same
Paul,
thought.
yeah,
like-
Paul and I have seen it, Janet's seen it, there've been a whole number of people, but I think, but we hadn't really heard the homeowner say directly what it was he wanted to do. And I think tonight, one of the things he clarified was that he didn't want to fill it so that there is no longer any water, that he was looking as an option of maintaining something. We'll hear him out, but we got the Goddard to say they will finish up, the paperwork that they're supposed to have done. And I think once we have that, then it's worth us going out for a site visit.
Whether he
and I
has 2 feet or 10 feet, or, I mean, it's not 10 feet, it's like 6 feet in the middle, 5 feet in the middle. I mean, it's
Or
not-
he seems to
Four.
3 to 4.
He
at the
so he
most.
wants to bring it down to 2 to 3, but if you've got a 1 and or a 2 and a 4-year-old, you can't.
Oh, no, your 2 inches thing,
I know, I
statement
mean-
was right on, but
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say the same thing.
You guys don't know this about me, but I was born in Dallas and I moved here when I was 8, and everyone in Texas had pools. So I learned how to swim at 2, and no one
Yeah.
had fences. And it was
Yeah.
like my mom's biggest fear was that, like, so at 2 years old, I was swimming in a pool, like with a private instructor, because again, no one had fences. I mean, I'm almost 60. No one had fences. So it was like, that was never an excuse. Like
The
my mother was
miracle
just
that you
like,
survived.
So yeah, no, so we're trying to, we don't want to have the heartbreak of Darwinism here. So
right. I mean, I didn't want to be like, you need to be a parent and you need to watch your child.
Well,
like,
I think that may be something that's something that comes up once we get them, proposing something. But basically, we've been going around in circles. So now they're going to propose something, and then we will look at it all. And part of that depends on whether Goddard can convince the commission that what they're proposing does little harm, but also they have a whole bunch of additional things they propose to make it better. And we'll see. But at least and then the idea of us getting out there to see what's actually involved there. I do wonder whether just having them take a couple shovelfuls of clay out, would be instructive. But I think Paul addressed that tonight by saying that across the street, the vernal pool there seems to be at the same elevation, and that's holding water. So, anyway, I think let's see what Goddard brings back to us. And we seem to have them focused. We finally heard from the homeowner that he wasn't looking to, just create a big backyard. Let's see. We'll see where it goes. And a site visit after we get a plan is absolutely in order. So I appreciate that.
okay.
Okay, let's see. Citizens' comments, item 2, the agendas.
I just wanted to fill you in on what I know about the rail trail schedule. So they got a good state grant money to do a final design and permitting and cost estimate, which they will bring back to, I think, not the May, but maybe a fall special town meeting. So I don't think anything is supposed to be happening on the rail trail because they don't have any permits or any kind of approval or so anyways, that's all I know.
I certainly was surprised.
Well, I was too. I mean, Tim knows this because, and you all know this, but like, I go down Farm Street every day, take a left on Donnelly, cross Hunt Drive, and I was like, wow, what are they doing taking that little section of the rail trail out? Like, and they've paved it now.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll find out. We'll find out. It's something's happening, and they got money to do things, although I thought it was just for studying. The irony was there was a reference in it of an Iron Horse, which was the original company that would come in and pull up rails
That's right. They were
for
gonna do it for
free.
nothing.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
really?
they went
Cost
out,
us nothing.
but they actually went out of business. So
I
I don't know who
know.
I don't know who the new
So
Iron Horse is.
the Iron Horse that you're referring to are the contractors that are rebuilding the town salt that town
co-
depot that we permitted.
Oh, right, you're right,
Power
exactly.
center?
No, the salt,
The salt shed.
The
yeah,
salt shed.
Yeah, exactly. That jumped out, it
the
jumped out at me
construction company
because,
there's called Iron Horse.
yeah, but that's what jumped out at me was, all of a sudden going, wait, I thought they weren't around. But then I
No,
saw
it's
they
different
were
Iron Horse.
contractors, yeah, so. So anyway, it's, for those of us who, appreciate a rail trail, even if, little by little, and then, and
Your
we're.
grandchildren will be able to use it.
Yeah.
I was young when I was on the rail trail committee.
Yeah. So, let's see. Oh, so I see the wording there, Janet. You're talking about allowing citizens to have comments at the beginning.
Yeah,
for-
this is something I've noticed that a majority of other town boards have this at the top of their agenda, or most of them at the top. It's not required, but
Mhm.
I just think it's probably a good practice. Occasionally we do get a resident and they hang around for the whole meeting and then they just have a minute or two of a question. And it kind of looks good too, I think. If you have an opportunity, you give people a very short time frame. But
Mhm.
If someone does come to the meeting and they have a question or concern, this is just a formal way to recognize them at the top of the agenda.
Yeah,
I like
it's
this idea.
Gotta be a
No, I do too.
lightning round.
No, yeah, lightning round, and also, but wait for that, wait for the rail trail crossing wetlands. That meeting there when 10 people show up for their 3 minutes each. But no, I think I've seen that, and I think very often in our case, they stop to see Lori first, and they get many of their questions answered. But I think the optics are good as well, and I think it gives somebody an ability to, possibly do that. So I don't have a problem with that. Lori, do you have any input on that?
No, it's whatever the commission wants to do. This came up a while back. I remember talking to you about it and talking to Mona because the selectmen do this.
Right.
They never get
And-
anybody.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't.
So-
And I think, part of it is we get many more technical things in front of us. But I don't, this would not be for those sorts of things. It's just it's a very
Yeah,
prescribed time frame.
whatever the commission thinks.
Yeah, so I think I'm willing to add it to our next agenda. Do people think that's or do you?
Let's try it out and see what happens.
Okay.
So
Okay,
John,
very
what do you, oh, sorry, Janet, you still are going. Go.
good. I'm done on that topic.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay, so the last item is the Board of Selectmen, the last couple of years have sent out their draft goals and priorities for the coming fiscal year and asked for board feedback. Last year, we did respond. I think the main issue from last year was the online permitting. There was no progress this year. So I'd say we'd want to provide some feedback that could be really helpful, make us more efficient and effective if we had an online permitting process. What else was on here? Oh, a website update, that would be nice. And then also developing a stronger IT department, because we have none now.
We're stronger.
Right.
Developing an IT.
Couldn't be less strong.
department.
Right.
So I would be happy to draft something for the commissions. I can send it out before our next meeting and you can comment on that at the next. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I appreciate it. So
And then-
that was sent, was that August 21st, sent out from the selectmen or?
Yes,
Mona
that
sent
was,
it.
Yes, that was sent out on the 21st and I sent it out. I got it on the 22nd. And then I sent that out. When did I send that out? I sent that out on the 26th, on Monday.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was looking at it, so I didn't get it from the selectmen. Okay.
So I don't know if anything jumps out at anyone else. We don't, if there's anything that's not on the list, that is also something we could refer to.
So, yeah, let's review that and yeah, why don't you go forward with the draft and then we'll review that.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's it.
Then any commissioners have anything they'd like to add that we may have overlooked?
Well, so the only thing is so John, I know you're so thorough and we all are so thorough. As a commissioner, and I know that Lori has us on the schedule and sometimes it's not always true. Like, how can we help you to get the stuff through? Like tonight, we like spent an hour on the discussion of 29 Settle Ridge.
Yeah, and that's been a problem every step of the way.
You know what I mean? Like, I would have thought that was 15 minutes, boom, 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 because then we would have been like, so it's just food for thought. I'm
Oh,
just
no.
saying, like,
Yeah, no, I
how
appreciate it.
as we as commissioners, I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt him. I don't want to interrupt anyone else, but I'm like, all right, like, there's got to be a point where like, okay, it's time. Like,
Well, that's
it's not
why
up to
I mean,
Lori to say time, like,
yeah, well, I think one of the things there is, for example, we could have I came in at, because I came in a little bit late and the discussion that was there, basically they've been pushing back every step of the way. And what I came in today with was, after reading Paul's report and everything, as you heard, was that it was a red herring. And I don't know, sometimes I may feel more perturbed than I portray, but I was really pissed off because, and that's
then
why
you
I
should have
called
been
it.
pissed off.
No, well, the thing is, to me, internally, I was pissed off, but the way I came out with it was I was saying, this is a red herring. We're not going to go there. This has nothing to do with what we're doing. And that was my way of cutting that part of that, because that could go on if you keep going volleying back and forth on things that really are not pertinent. So I came in and I got rid of that. And it does perturb me because had nothing to do with it. And then I wanted to make it very clear that regardless of what they said, we have our bylaw, as I had, Janet confirm, if you observe this once a year, that's all you need. And we've already done it twice a year and we're not through the year, period. It's an ILSF. We're not going to argue about this anymore. So that was my goal, to do that. And now we actually have them, we're requiring a plan. We're not going to talk to them if we don't get a plan. So that's, now it's supposed to move somewhere. I was perturbed and we had to do that. We had to go through that volley, but I wanted to cut that volley down as much as possible, because exactly, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, we're still on this thing a year later. The yard's a mess. And we should, that's why I wanted to just determine and make it very clear. It's an ILSF. I don't care what you say. We've proven it. We know it is. End of story. No more Goddard pushing back. We gave them the fact that it might not be a vernal pool. Okay, we're done there. So now, hopefully we're moving to the next step there. But I share the frustration, but I think we had to go through those steps to actually get to an end result there.
But I guess for me as a board, as a commissioner supporting you, I would love to be able to, without being rude, kind of, I don't ever want to cut anyone off, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I wanted to say, like, 15 minutes into this, like, okay, like, we're done here. Like,
and I think on some of these enforcement orders, which have eaten up a lot of our time, I think the idea of having board, commissioners come, raise your hand and say, look, you have an enforcement order, you haven't done it yet. We're not going to talk to you until you do it.
Right,
or ask,
stop
you know,
wasting
ask
our
the chair.
time, stop wasting our
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Right.
or ask the chair and say, look, it's not a matter of, and that's the other thing I wanted to get across to them tonight, which I will use for other people, but these people are particularly egregious about it, which is if you're trying to do something, show what it is what you're trying to do. Don't, we're not going to guess anymore. We're not trying to, it's eating up our time, and you're not
And don't
coming
play the
in
game
straight.
and like, don't waste our time. Like, if
So
you're
I
okay
think,
with me, like, I mean, I've been quiet throughout this whole 9 years, but like, I'm starting to get like, oh, like,
well, I think
We just-
in this last year, enforcement orders, I mean, like we had Will Mitchell in front of us again, okay? So I think the thing there is, number one, I will try to tighten up and focus things on saying, this is what, you blew it. We're enforcing something, and now you have to do that. Sometimes we're trying to work with people so it doesn't cost them as much money. But if they've
we're being
done
nice. We're like being nice
Right.
neighbors. It's like,
yeah,
right.
yeah. But at the same time, the
They can
idea,
afford
I
to
have no,
live in Dover, they can afford to
yeah,
fix.
exactly. And I appreciate, and I have no problem, because part of the reason with 29 Saddle Ridge is I have the background to understand what the engineers were talking about, and I didn't agree with Paul, and I can come out and say that, but I don't want to get into the weeds on it. And so, if somebody having a commissioner say, "Okay, this is under discussion. There's nothing filed here. This is actually an enforcement order. So you have 15 minutes worth of time. And if you can't convey that what you need to do in those 15 minutes, we'll see you in another 2 weeks." I have no problem if somebody has an issue with that and brings that up. And I may lose track of time because I may feel like we're getting close to something. But I think we all have every reason to feel that this is, as a volunteer board, this takes up an excessive amount of our time.
Well,
For
that's
those sorts of
exactly.
things.
One of the things that I notice about that happens a lot is that we
Mhm.
get people and they think they're making up the rules.
Mhm.
And
Well,
I think that it would
Right. And-
behoove us to say, that's not, you
Well,
can't do
for-
that. That's not the rule.
So for
You can't
example,
do that.
210 Claybrook tonight, when I, gently chastised, I don't know how it came across, the engineer saying, no, you can't make the rules up. And number two, you have a stamp. You can't go ahead and sign something if you haven't actually gone out and done that stuff. And that's, Jan and I have discussed that. We've all have, voiced it at times, which is, this is your job. Do it.
Right.
And the
you
next,
were pretty
and
firm.
yeah, and the next, and so there, for example, no, we're not going to just say you can put a fence there. Show us. So
Well,
and that
and we
one,
never let them put a fence that stops the wildlife. We've never
Oh
done.
my God, I was listening to that. And he was like, it would just let the bird go through, but not the squirrel. And I'm like,
no.
what?
So
Somebody forgot to
through
tell him
fences.
that the ticks actually come in on mice that go through chain link fences.
yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So
Like,
I think
you're moved to
there I
Dover,
think
like,
I think we handled that relatively quickly on that, and made it clear to the engineer that he wasn't doing his work up to snuff. And Janet and I have discussed this, that we have some people, Joyce is a perfect example. We get a submission on Joyce. We know she's been out there. She she notes everything, and it goes very easily. Then we have other people who come in from, haven't worked in town that often, and the work is not up to snuff. So I think we made it clear to this particular person, and I think we'll make it clearer. I think it's a good point, making it clearer to both homeowners and engineers that no, the rules are the rules, and this is the deal. I know we're kind of trapped a little bit into 29 Saddle Ridge because we've given them this much leeway, but tonight we've made it clear that no matter what you say, it's an ILSF. I think on COCs. Janet's reports are pretty good, are very good at outlining, no, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. The idea that an engineer would look to a builder and say, oh yeah, well, the builder told me.
well, you handled that well tonight when you
Yeah,
said
so
you're an engineer. You're not supposed to look to the builder.
yeah,
That's
so
not
so
your
those
job.
are things, but I think this is feel free to interject something in a way that says, this as a discussion, this seems to be going on, to the detriment of other people that we have scheduled tonight.
So I can say that. I will say that the next time.
I'll do more of that too. I was also
Me
going.
too. I just,
we're going in circles.
Out of deference to all you guys, I didn't want to be rude, but I just was
No,
like,
no, but
God,
I mean,
where's this going? Like, this is
you
like
can bring
going-
it. Yeah, you can bring it
And
up. I mean, I think we actually got somewhere tonight as opposed to the other 5 or 6 meetings we've had there on them. But feel free to bring it up because it also sets a standard for other people who are going to come after them, for that night's meeting. But especially when it comes to things under discussion, look, you did something that's against the rules. You got 15 minutes to update us, and we're on to the next person.
But also, I have no problem saying to the whole commission and everyone is saying, with all due respect, we're all volunteers and this is our time. And you're biting into our time right now.
Yeah.
So if
and I will try to be more conscious of looking at these as rules that that people don't get, and I don't think that I ever think that I'm giving them that, but that people don't get an infinite amount of time to make their case. That, if they, especially if they're under an enforcement order, this is it. You may, you honor the enforcement order, and then we can talk. I mean, in hindsight, maybe we should have had 29 just go ahead and replant everything and then come to us with an RDA or actually an NOI. But we're, arguing over what it was. But so I think being a little bit more definite about these things and making it our agenda and not theirs, I think that's a really good point. So
I also think as we've been going with 29 Saddle Ridge and this is going in circles and it's not a good use of our time. Every single meeting they've been going, maybe we can convince them. And we were pretty sure what we were looking at in May. So it's wasting their time too. So I don't know. I will do more about jumping in and being like, we're not getting to a resolution. Let's come back.
And that would be helpful. I have no problems with that. So for me, sometimes, as I said, I get in the technical weeds because I think if we just, get one other bit of the truth, it becomes self-evident, and so that we don't have to go any farther. But that doesn't always work.
And I also think we're all just so nice. We're all just, I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but like, we're just nice. Like, we're just trying to be like, okay, well, here's your side of the story.
Understanding or whatever.
Right, understanding.
So, no, I have some feelings about that, but since we don't have some of the applicants still on the meeting, I don't want to, but I will bring them up other times to be a little less nice because I think there've been a couple things that were just completely boneheaded. And I will bring those up if we don't have any movement on them. But absolutely keep in mind, I think, number one, now that we're actually putting times in, we can point to those times as part of this process. So if somebody starts to, and just tell, it's what's the thing you see behind cash registers, something about your emergency is not my emergency, or I forget what the thing there is, and just say, well, look, we have other people, we're not going to do that. It's interesting. I met with Kate Faulkner the other day, and
how's she doing?
She's doing great. And so she was over looking at I just had my house painted, and as an old, and she's looking at having hers. So she was, seeing if I wasn't sure if the painters would be up to snuff for her. But she voiced a desire possibly to come back on the board. And probably
So
for
can I
8
just
months.
explain? Can I just interrupt you? So Anna, Kate Faulkner was on the board when I first became a commissioner. And she's got the beautiful horse farm on Haven Street. And she's an oncologist. I mean, she's an amazing woman, but she always was. She would leave them when we all met in person. She would look at, I guess it was John, you were, or Tim, one of you guys were the chair, and she was like, I'm out of here at 9:30, and she would leave. I mean, she was gone.
Well, and then she was a chair for a while as well.
Oh, she
but
was?
never, yeah, but she never. but
I
I
didn't mean
think,
to interrupt you, but I just wanted to give Anna the history
so
of.
anyway, but so
good to know.
but she asked me, so, you know, how are the meetings going? And I'm thinking, you know, we're sort of hitting our stride now, but I want, you know, I really want another commissioner, but I also, all these things that you know, you've been mentioning, you know, if we can just, I agree, if we can tighten things up a little bit better as a commission entirely, you know, to, so that, and I think by putting times on the page, being a little bit more disciplined about enforcing some of those times, and make it clear that as a chair, any commissioners who want to bring up a point of information, such as we're running a little long on this, maybe that we should come back to it at our next meeting. And frankly, it won't take many times before the applicant will then realize that they have limited time and they have to use it wisely. So I think
you got to be really careful how you say that. Susie Jimerson, Susie Sale, who was chair when I started on the commission 100 years ago. She said, and this was actually before I was on, she said to somebody, "Your time has come." And they were going to sue the town because she said your time has come. They took it as a threat.
Oh, really? Oh, well,
yes, absolutely. It was very funny. They didn't, but
yeah, no. So it's
be a little careful.
Yeah. Well, I will. That's why I might be seething inside, but apparently I don't show that.
You don't show it at all, John.
You can show it a little more.
Never.
Yeah. So it's, well, I wasn't. So when I was feeling that way, when I dictated that the ILSF thing was done, as far as I was concerned, it was that. Did that come across as? So obviously that didn't come across as angry. It just came across as a decision.
No, you came across as firm. I mean, you were firm about it.
And factual,
you didn't come across as
factual and
angry.
firm,
Okay.
but not, no.
No, I get the idea was I wanted to put an end to it, and I think, you know, make it a declaration that, you know, that's no longer an issue there. I think also you saw the way I wasn't that angry. I was more, as I keep using this word, perturbed, but regarding the engineer. Annoyed. They're much better with the engine. When I outlined my feeling what the engineer's responsibilities were, so that apparently didn't come across as angry, but I think, did it come across as annoyed?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay.
Appropriately.
So that was, yeah, and that was the goal. So I will try to moderate my voice in a way to convey my internal feelings a little bit more, to try to shorten things. But by all means, feel free to step in and point things out, because
Kai, you're not allowed to show your feelings.
And one thing is, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, and I know the governor is against this, but you know, when I first became a commissioner 9 years ago and we were meeting in town hall, the meetings were efficient. They were over by 9:30. I think this platform allows people to go on and on and on. So I mean, again,
no, I think that's a good point. For example, engineers who have to travel and they want to get home at a decent hour, so they're not going to go.
But they want to show their boards. They're up
Yep.
there. They do it, and like we were in and out of there. Like we were there at 7:30. We were out of there by 9:30. So
to be fair, I think we've had a boatload of enforcement orders. I mean, you know, if you look at 1214 Miller Hill, how much time that took up. And that was an enforcement order.
But I really feel like they were trying to wear us out, the same as the
29 Saddle Ridge. Right.
29 Saddle Ridge is trying to wear us out, and the Haven Terrace, he was trying to wear us out. And that's when we get the long meetings, is when people are, and Will Mitchell's trying to wear us out.
Well, I think so. And
he's just disorganized, I think.
Yeah,
I think he's trying to wear us out.
Don't you think if we were in person, it wouldn't be that way?
I don't know whether it would be or not, but I'm pretty burnt out right now, so I'm gonna go to bed.
Okay, bye, Kate. And so, but no, I think that's one point. I think the other thing is to be a little bit more we could be more definitive. We can, like, for example, we basically told Haven Terrace to go get another engineer because it was a waste of time. But that we've had these.
Yeah, but what we also need to, I mean, with stuff like Saddle Ridge, we have to just say, we don't care about groundwater. It's an LSF. I mean, you didn't say that until like 45 minutes in, when they were
Oh,
trying
really?
to.
'Cause I thought I wanted to just sort of lay the groundwork. I wanted to say that when I first got on screen.
It did. You
Yeah, I'm
maybe
sorry
you
that-
wanted to, but they didn't
Yeah,
listen.
no,
to it.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, so
I mean, it just, it's.
They equivocate.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
tried
no,
to
and I
say,
think-
oh, well, look at this and look at that. And I'm like,
well, so we're
I'm-
sussing we're sussing that out, and we're also sussing out that Goddard does that frequently.
Yes.
And so that we
Yes.
need to just be more direct with them and say that this is what we expect. And I think the timeframes I think I can do a better job, as well as people reminding me, utilize the timeframes and say, look, this is what the time you have, make the best of it, and then move it on to the next hearing.
Right.
And so we don't have to try to solve everything within 1 or 2 hearings, because obviously in some of these cases, they don't take the bait and it continues and continues.
Let's
But if
want
we,
to, right, and the owners get involved and blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So what I'll pay more attention to timeframes, and feel free to remind me
Okay.
on that stuff. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So thanks, Sarah, for volunteering to be the clock keeper.
Yeah, I will be. I just don't want to be the rude one who's like, John, like,
No.
These meetings go so long. I don't think it's rude at this point. Like, get us out of here.
right.
Yeah, no, we'll figure out the right wording.
once the hunt
Uh,
season
Yeah.
starts, you'll have no
or-
choice.
Right,
Or-
exactly. I'll be like, I'm
if it-
exhausted.
If anybody has a foghorn, just a little.
Oh, I
so-
do. I have them for my coyotes in the back.
Oh,
I want
yeah.
this marine, like,
Or if you want to be a bell would be, a little bit more.
you don't
subtle,
want one of
but-
those, the marine
I-
horn.
I have
So
one
anyway-
of those.
Oh,
Mhm.
you do?
Yep.
So anyway,
I'm not sure where it is, but I do have.
thanks
John,
for the input.
Oh,
We
Jan,
will-
I think
we will-
Jan has one more thing.
Yeah.
Jan has one more thing.
I'm sorry, but
Oh,
I've just thought of something about 29 Saddle Ridge. So we had brought Paul on as a third party, and the property
there?
to pay Paul.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that money was put into escrow or if we're just forwarding the bills. But with the restoration plan coming and all that information, we should be prepared.
Okay, that's a good reminder. Lori, what's your
No, there is still an outstanding bill from June for Paul for work that was done a long time ago. And that's been sent to Vadran with emails.
Oh,
with
no, that's
notes.
29. You were talking about 31 Springdale, Janet?
No, 29.
Oh,
29
you were, I'm
Saddle Ridge.
sorry, 20.
Yeah, no,
Ah.
Vadran knows that there's an outstanding bill and Paul hasn't even mentioned it, but I've contacted him a number of times and that doesn't even count Paul's appearance at tonight's hearing or his recent
Right.
memo. So
Okay, so they're coming back. Were they coming back at the 11th meeting or the 28th? What was their?
11.
The 28th, because they
28th.
said 4 weeks.
Yes.
Okay,
We
Right.
said,
He-
we
okay,
said that the documentation has to be in 3 weeks.
Right.
okay.
Exactly.
Let's
So that-
let's get Paul's next time you talk to Paul, let's get his bill for this most recent stuff. And we'll send that out and basically we will not hold a hearing with him until that bill is paid.
Right.
okay,
Okay,
sounds good. I was gonna bring it up,
how's that-
but like Sarah
how's
said,
that?
the
Is that better,
conversation
guys?
was going on so long. I didn't
Yeah.
wanna-
No, I appreciate it. So, and thanks, Janet, as well for bringing that up. So I think, yeah, that's another way to just, we want to tighten it up, and you guys they're gonna have to make a decision. So, and I think. What's
I'm
that?
sorry. And then just to update you on Red Robin, Likewise, Paul knows that we're gonna need to bring in Tetra Tech to review the
Mhm.
certificate of compliance, so
Mhm.
he agreed, once we get an estimate to him, he agreed to cover that.
Good. And, okay, anything else, folks? Thank you for time, effort, loyalty. And,
I'm not here at the next meeting, so just making sure you have a quorum.
why was it something Sarah said?
No, I will definitely be here in the next meeting. This is the
Okay.
11th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Okay,
thank you
folks.
very much, everyone. So hearing no objection, tonight's up, sorry, there's, you're saying, you
I
weren't
was
holding your hand up?
waving goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
No, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Night,
Bye.
everyone.
Night, all.
Okay, bye.
Bye,
Have a
guys.
good Labor Day, everybody.
You too.
Likewise.
Bye.